Hello, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to this, our first SwitchOn Can London. My name is Philip Bell. I'm one of the organising team here at Sofa Summits. It's our absolute pleasure and privilege to be running this event today in conjunction with the Chief Architect Network. For those of you who've not attended a SwitchOn before, we've been organising our Enterprise Architecture Show event since 2020, all virtually. So this is our first venture into the in-person world. So yes, bear with us. But yeah, we're super excited to be partnering up with Grant and the Chief Architect Network for today's event. We've had a great morning here in London, and we're really, really excited to welcome all of the SwitchOn community and also the Chief Architect community for this, our live broadcast of this afternoon's session. So yes, I'd now like to welcome Grant in.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here with you folks, and we're very excited to do this first joint ever event. We've been supporting partners of one another for many years now, and for us to take our event in London and bring this to the world is actually pretty cool. It's always been a dream of mine. So here we are. We've got a plan to be together. If you're in the Eastern time zone in the United States, from 8:30 to 11:30. Or if you're here in London, 1:30 to 5:30, and here are quite a few other time zones around the world that I won't rattle off. So what is the Chief Architect Network? If you're new to us, we are a 501c3 nonprofit volunteer organization that has 657 Chief Architect members globally. And this is a picture of where we are around the world. It's pretty cool. The things about this network, it's a no cost, no selling environment, non-delegated, it's for the leaders. There hasn't been a community for leaders. That's what makes it kind of special. And we're in the room here with about 70 leaders, 70 of our peers. We're vendor neutral, and we have Chapman House rules. We're here to widen perspectives. The world is changing too quickly for us to keep up by reading. So we really need each other to stay abreast of what's happening and to guide our organizations to be successful. We share best practices, we grow as leaders, we develop talent, and we drive outcomes. That's why we're here.
So, who is SwitchOn and what have we been doing? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've been organising our SwitchOn, the Enterprise Architecture Show events across the globe since 2020. Sorry. And yes, our next event is actually taking place next Thursday, our SwitchOn Exchange Americas event. If you are interested in joining, then you can do so free of charge today. The link is on the screen. And you can use the code CANLONDON to sign up. So we have a wonderful agenda lined up for next Thursday, all happening virtually. Grant will be moderating one of the panel discussions there. We've been working with Grant and the Chief Architect Network since your inception, pretty much. As a kind of win-win. So we get great content and they're able to spread the word to the whole network as well. So yes, do join us next Thursday. It's going to be a great show and we look forward to seeing you all online then.
If you weren't already bored, we'll have 10 of our members in that show. So what are you going to hear today? We're going to stay on time. So if you want to join us at various points, this is what to expect when you jump into our agenda. We're going to start with a live podcast of consultants saying things. I'm very excited to have 3 of the cast members with us here in person and Phil remotely. We're going to have the Architect Tomorrow podcast all in person with Oliver Crunk and several of his friends, Lisa and Wendy. We're going to go into the talent signal. This is a live show for folks that are remote. They have the ability to come in, join us for the chief architects that aren't in the room today, and meet with Michael Butts and several others to discuss what's happening in talent with the changes we're seeing. At 3 o'clock, we're going to go from architecture to advantage with Rich Corbridge, the CIO at Sergo, and someone I absolutely think embodies the architecture thinking and leadership. And then we're going to take EA to the strategy table with none other than Wendy Keene. Very excited about that. We'll have a CxO panel on artificial intelligence with several of the leaders here. And we will then step into sharing a little bit about what the Chief Architect Network is. We'll only spend 15 minutes there, but I think it's helpful to kind of put us into context. And we'll close out sharing with you who's winning the Architect Leader of the Year, Europe. So that is a very aggressive and exciting agenda. We'll be packing it in today. So I'd love to welcome up the cast of Consultants Saying Things to take away our first segment.
That button. There we go. Oh, look at that. And then there was sound.
And there was sound.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we have never done this live before, quite frankly. So this could be a complete failure. So we'll address that as we go. But my name is Chris Lockhart. This is a podcast that we've been doing for quite some time, video podcast. It's called Consultants Saying Things. I'm joined in person by my wonderful co-hosts. We have Wendy Keene, who I believe a lot of people know, and we have Oliver Cronk. We also have our other cast member, Phil Yanoff. We have little Phil up here. Normally, he's a giant head behind us on the screen. He's a tiny little head up there on the side over there today. So we have small Phil up on the screen. It's wonderful to be here. We are here at Capgemini in London. It is, 1:35 British summertime. Do I have that right, Ollie? Excellent. So that is 8:35 Eastern Standard Time. Good morning to everyone on the East Coast. Hope you have your coffee. One of the things listen, if you're at a business and technology conference anytime lately, the number one topic, of course, is AI. That is what everyone is talking about. One of the things that I think makes our show a little bit interesting is we sometimes take a bit of a contrarian tone on some of these things. I want to take a little bit of a different perspective today. Today, we want to talk about decisions that AI cannot make for you or on your behalf. I'll start off with a little anecdote because this was kind of interesting to me. I woke up this morning and I went to Grok and I said, how do I get to the Capgemini headquarters? What's the best way? It said, well, you walk and you go this way and that way and you can get over there. I immediately ordered a cab. As Oliver knows, I do not like to walk. And in that moment, I thought, that's kind of interesting. The best way to get here, which AI advised me, was to walk. I chose, on the other hand, to take a cab. Human context piece of that, i.e. me, had a different perspective on what it meant to walk in the lovely British weather in the morning. Phil, I know you're with us here. Good morning to you. I wanted to know if you perhaps had a little bit of thought here on that context, that Chris Lockhart deciding he's going to do something different, that AI told him he should do something else. What are your thoughts on that, my friend?
I was concerned from the minute you said I pulled up Grok and asked it a question.
Fair.
So fair. Yeah.
Thank you.
And quite frankly, I like this being tiny because I feel like I'm your conscience and I'm just about the right size.
Love it.
For this screen.
Right. Are you on the right shoulder though, which shoulder are you on?
It's whichever one you feed the most. Clearly, I'm eating well. So here's the thing in that bit, right? Yeah, we're going to ask it, but today, right? These models are only so smart. Their learning is jagged, and yeah, we're going to make decisions for ourselves. And here's right now, Chris, we feel pretty good about that because the decisions are good enough that the decisions are in fact jagged enough. Their understanding is imperfect, and we're going to go, oh, I'm the smarter one here. What's going to happen when you go? And it's like when you asked Grok, heaven forfend, but when you ask Grok about this and it says, well, Chris, if you were the athletic type, I would get you to walk out there, but I know you, so I've already called the Uber. It's got you going.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's one of those things, right? Because there's this whole bit, Oliver, about like agency, right? And the whole idea of AI doing things on our behalf, doing things for us that we ask it to do, but we may or may not take its answers as either something we can trust or something that we want to give over to it, right?
Yeah, and I think, look, I don't want to pick on anyone this morning, but there is a lot of language that we need to be really careful with, right? We are using a lot of human labels, human traits like learning, intelligent, reasoning, right? I think we need to, as architects in the room, we need to be really careful we aren't being hoodwinked, right? Because this technology is probably one of the first technologies that can sell itself and pretend it can do things that can it really? So I think we just need to bear that in mind. I'm not a Luddite by any means. I'm a big technologist, but I think we do need to kind of be that it depends voice in the room, right? And so, yeah, a word of caution on some of this, because I think it's very easy to kind of be convinced by some of this technology. And I think we just need to be cautious.
Yeah, and Wendy, one of the things I'm always interested, right, is sort of being the going against the grain of what the thing is telling me to do, right? I frequently, get in the Tesla, put in the destination, and it's like, go this way. And I'm like, hell no, I'm going this way, right? And sure enough, It was actually right the first. There was traffic the other way. So I'm kind of interested in sort of your take on this ability for us to make our own decisions based on the results that come out of this. Because let's be honest, it really is only going to give us a good enough answer by what we put into it, right?
I actually really like the simple example you gave because it's so obvious, your context of overriding it because you don't want to walk, right? Because it's obviously a lot more blurred and slippery on more complex things like you're saying, Oliver, or, this convenience factor of just going along and following it. So it's like, I feel like there are simpler things where if you take the wrong route, like, so what, then maybe it's a little bit more of an adventure. But I think it's when things get more important, then we have to start to say, what's my trigger point, right? To not just go with the answer, but to actually stop and make sure I'm making the decision when it's value-based or requires a trade-off.
Yeah, you're right. My lack of exercise is not going to result in, the end of a business or something, right? That's that sort of thing. But, well, it may, who knows? But, Phil, one of the things, I know we've talked a little bit about this is, how do I get to a point where I can begin to trust the answers that are coming out of this and know, for example, this morning that the right thing to do was to walk, as an example, right? It seems like I would need to know maybe some context that I need to put into a prompt or something in order to get the right answer out, something that I can validate and something that I could trust. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, we're at that mode now, right? We're just having these things iterate actually gets us better answers much of the time, right? You can almost always, if you get a kind of an iffy answer back, say, just simply try harder and actually get a better answer the second time, right? And it's sad that that actually works. And it also works with my kids sometimes. But the point is that you could roll through this and try it multiple times. But I don't think that's particularly complicated in that we're going to build trust the same way we might do with a junior team member. We're going to ask questions, and as we get wrong answers, we're going to say, "Are you sure? How did you get to that? What's the evidence for that?" We're going to ask clarifying questions, and eventually it gets better, I presume. And the thing is, these models are moving so quickly that maybe they get better in a way that we can use them, right?
Well, and guys, do we get to a point where maybe there's, it's one thing to just sort of have which direction should I go? But if I'm asking really meaningful questions, is there maybe a moral trade-off, or are there some questions around that, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, and this evolves over time, right? As Phil was just saying, these models are changing and getting better and being able to do things that they couldn't do before. So I think it's like, yeah, a great example of this is you wouldn't have a human in the loop on recommending you a film on Netflix, right? We used to call that AI. We now don't really call it AI, but it was, and it is really. Yet there are other things where the friction of a human being really thinking something through, and I've been having discussions with my peers around this, around what do we call this thing, that the human essence, the human taste, the human care. What is it? The intuition. What is it that we're kind of the capability that humans bring to the table that we really need to sort of think critically about when we're thinking about that trade-off between full automation, full still human doing a task, and that kind of blurry middle as we kind of move things in our organizations from that manual to automated sort of journey. I think that's really critical. What is the human being bringing, and is the friction actually a useful part of the process? People might think, yeah, we can automate everything, we can make things really fast, but actually, was that human friction actually a vital part of the process in the first place?
I love that so much, Oliver. I just want to echo that. And it also feels like there's what do humans bring? We can also acknowledge there is an intuition we have. There's this amazing set of things that we do in our brains and the recognition that we have. So, it might be like a hiring decision. And yes, all the variables are checked, but we instinctively know that there's a better choice. So really hanging on to that.
Yeah, and a little bit of audience participation here, but like, how many people, or like, just show of hands, how many people have used AI of any sort today? That could be Copilot, it could be Claude, it could be anything. Okay, decent show of hands. Okay, keep your hands up. And how many people trusted the results that came out of that? Okay, still pretty good. How many people would trust it to choose your spouse or partner? Okay, all the hands.
There we go.
All the hands went down. Right. This is an interesting, right, sort of thing, right? We trust. I mean, I remember the days when it was like, I don't really trust GPS. I rely on GPS all the time. In fact, I rely on full self-driving all the time, right? a guy that said I would never give up control of my vehicle. I give up control of the vehicle all the time. I implicitly trust it. But would I go so far as to trust it with a spousal decision, right? Or those sorts of things? I don't know that I would. And I think that introduces this idea, right, that it can compute, it can automate, it can make efficient, it can make routine judgments, it can do all these sorts of things, but it's going to lack a context, which is the Chris Lockhart context, which is that little bit that's in my brain of, how do I feel today? What is my mood, right? For those of you at dinner last night, right? My mood last night was not great, right? So, those things, right? It comes into question, and I think it comes into play. Phil, I know, like, when you're dealing with folks, and for those who don't know, Phil deals a lot with networking events and that sort of thing, and also hosting and emceeing various events. You're probably frequently asked this question about AI and the trust factor, and just a little thought there from you about what your feelings are around this context, this piece of this human soul, right, that goes into the decision making.
I really thought you were coming after me on this because you thought I wasn't that good at picking out spouses. So
no, all three of them have been great, Phil. So that's
why I was laughing.
I just, a swing and a miss. But yeah, I'm not too keen on the human exceptionalism part, but I know this is going to sound like we keep coming back to the same thing. But you think about, and I'm going to tie this to consulting, right? But a part of it is, I'm not asking the right question. When you say, am I going to use this to pick my spouse or to make some other load-bearing decision or something for myself, right? I mean, I think that is problematic. But part of it is we're not really asking a good enough question when we get to that part. And what I mean by that is it's a missed requirement. Like, I'm not able to say all of the things I want. I mean, you think about all the times that I've been inside of an engagement, and it's like we just never got deep enough to figure out what really was the problem they were trying to solve. Because there was the problem they were willing to admit to, and then there was the problem that was underneath, and then there was the stuff they didn't even see, right? And this kind of brings us back to this Minos paradox bit. But I think sometimes we don't know what it is we need to ask, and that's one of the reasons we're getting bad answers.
Wendy, I love this idea of, it goes back to sort of the enterprise architecture or business architecture question that one of my mentors, Dave Baker, always asked, right? Which was, what problem are you solving? What business problem are you solving, right? By implementing this tool or solving for this technology. And I think in this particular case, there's probably a similar kind of thing at play, right? Are we asking the right question here? What problem are we asking AI to solve for us?
Of course. And, as we always say on the show, ask good questions. It's all about that. And whatever the Einstein quote is, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 59 minutes actually framing it, and then you can solve it. I think is entirely right.
Yeah, and Ollie, I don't know if you had any thoughts on like sort of this contextual thing, right? I mean, Oliver took some of us on a nice tour of Stonehenge the other day, and as opposed to doing the tour bus, drive up and pay the fee and all that sort of stuff, Oliver took us in some random back way, which you only would have. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. But this is sort of like that context, right? Because we wouldn't have found that if we hadn't asked that right question and gotten to that right place to
it's actually a really nice example in a way, because I guess Stonehenge for me is on the way to my mum's house, so I kind of see it like every fortnight, every month when I go down to Somerset to see her. So I kind of know that area quite well. But if you just use the tools and you used AI or Google Maps to give you a recommendation, it would probably say, book a ticket in advance and do this, that, and the other. And reality was that Chris was coming after the visitor centre was closed. But I happened to know that there's a byway that runs parallel to Stonehenge. And so you can literally get, legally, as a member of the public, you can walk along the footpath, and it's literally the other side of the fence where the official access is to Stonehenge. So, and it was quite a different experience, but it's that human sort of local decisioning. Now, some of that will bleed away, of course, with better data. AI could give you better recommendations, but I still think there is something here that we need to hold on to, because fundamentally, what are we doing all this for? Like, I don't believe we do the things in business entirely to build machines that are just going to talk to machines. I think fundamentally businesses are here to serve human society, and we do need to remind ourselves sometimes, I think, that the human actually in the equation is quite an important part of the situation. It's not, I don't think the goal should be to have like systems just talking to systems. I know the AI arms race is probably pushing us in that direction, but I think we should be challenging it more.
And I think intent is so important. And going back to the having AI pick your spouse, maybe it can if I gave it the right context and everything, but I wouldn't want that. Me personally, like I want the magic of that journey. And that to me is intent of what we hold on to.
Phil, are you willing to try that for the next one, or is?
I'm done. One of us goes out of this in a box. So
That's fantastic. So, all right.
Yeah.
So, we frequently talk about, trying to give practical advice to folks and consultants who are new in consulting or have been in it for a while or considering it or considering getting out of it. We often talk about them as, the cats out there, all those cats out there that are thinking about this. What is some practical stuff that we can give to these folks to say, listen, this is one way to think about AI as you take it forward and its practical usage. I don't know, Phil, did you want to take that one first, or?
The thing is, this is moving so fast that, if you're in that early mid part of your career in particular, you need to be figuring out what these tools are capable of, right? And how you might be able to use them, because, I went from, people that I'm working with have gone from they're kind of skeptical, I don't know if we're going to do this, to I'm paying Anthropic $100 or $200 a month so that I can actually do iterative coding in it. And by the way, I'm doing the work of 5 people the way I've got this thing worked out now. So I think there are lots of places you can do big things, and it is moving quickly. So I'd say you should be running experiments and hanging out with other people who are running experiments.
I mean, I'm in danger of repeating myself a little bit, but it's kind of having for your organization, your enterprise, the kind of policy and decisioning that helps you decide, what flavor of architecture is appropriate for a particular context. So I think that having almost some sort of policy or guardrails around that, I think is really, really important, because I think otherwise there's a danger we get a little bit carried away, a little bit excited. And I think, we do need that sort of critical lens to sort of sometimes just rein us in a little bit. And maybe the answer will eventually be full automation, but we just need to go baby steps our way there. But I'm also keen to kind of get to the room as well.
I want to hear what Wendy has to say real quick, and then we'll grab some questions from the audience.
Mhm.
If there are any. I mean, who knows? We may have answered everything in 30 minutes.
Practical from an individual perspective, I think it's know your values and know the trigger points when you know that you need to make the decision. It sounds obvious when we say it right now, but the conversations get slipperier, right? Things get grayer. And when I say know your values, even just thinking about a recent conversation we had here at CAN, as I think about like writing books, like I have certain values on what I do or don't do. There's not a right answer, but just knowing your values, I think, is important. And then second, like, I said, if there's a serious human trade-off or a values-based, how do we interpret this situation? Well, just that has to come back to you.
No, I think that's great. Do we have questions? Grant, are you the official mic?
I am. Let's see if we have any questions
Questions
in
or
the room.
thoughts? Comments? Nobody has any
Comments or
questions.
Or is there something someone thinks that AI shouldn't decide? That was, I think, one
that's
of the
great.
main things
Yeah.
we're going to ask the audience.
Are we wrong?
Examples of things that AI shouldn't
There
decide.
we go.
There we
Over
go. We got
here,
one
our
over
first
here.
victim.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to reference some rules we've already got in Europe. So there's the...
Join the show. Would you like to sit? Here, have a seat. There we go. We do this 4 times a month, by the way. Are you available?
So, in Europe, there's the AI Act, and that has some very strict rules about what we can and can't do with AI. Some of that is probably correct. Some of it might be a bit difficult. I was at the Gartner conference, and the lady that helped to drive that through was there, and she said how horribly difficult it was to get consensus. So I guess the question to the room and to the panel is, given that we're going to get some rules going forward, how do we keep to our own values?
Well, that's an interesting one. Is there something from Stoicism, Phil, that I know you're deeply involved with that might serve to help answer this?
I have this much bigger
is it?
question in that regard.
He's
In
on
that
mute.
regard,
He's
right?
muted. If only
I'm not
AI
muted.
could help with,
Sold the seat.
it's Grant's fault.
I'm here. I think it's Grant. Grant says, I'm a.
Okay, well,
Hello. Can you hear me now?
All right. Well, in the interim, I mean, I think certainly, right, there are rules, and Wendy, you kind of pointed this out, right, which is, there are going to be some, ethical and regulatory things about that can and cannot happen. And then I think there's the own personal set of internal values, right? Right, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, and also, look, this is where your organization is going to show up differently, right? If you are visibly, not just with words, but how you're acting in terms of how seriously you're taking responsible and ethical AI. Are you paying lip service to this, or actually are you demonstrably sometimes making difficult trade-off decisions where perhaps competitors have gone down a certain route and you're choosing another pathway because you think that's actually the more responsible, more values-aligned approach? I think that's going to be, I think everyone's saying, oh, you're going to live and die at the moment around how competitive you're around AI. I do actually wonder whether it's actually your risk reward sort of approach here, and in some cases not being the first may be the right answer, because it may actually reward you with better brand loyalty or create a better experience for your customers. So, and that's just something slightly contrarian. I know everyone at the moment is just saying AI, but I think it's just, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for enshittifying your customer experience the first?
Absolutely.
Or do you actually want to take time to kind of get the right balance?
Philip, I think we have you now.
Are you sure? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep. Loud and clear.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I love the fact that we are having conversations about what is ethical and what is right. And we also have to understand, I think, that not everybody is in that conversation. So this is a tool that will outstrip some people's ethical frameworks pretty quickly. And we have to be able to, so our responsibility, even as ethical and right-minded, if we imagine such a thing, morally upright people, is to understand that not everybody next to us is going to feel the same, and we might have to defend against their thinking.
I think that's fair too, right? And that whole thing about, if AI is making the decision, who's ultimately responsible? The people who created the prompt or the tool itself or whatever it may be, right? Quick, we have a new guest. So quick question from you.
I like what Phil's saying, because I struggle with this. And because let's take what we just talked about for a second, which was, do we want AI picking our spouse, right? Well, I've been married 44 years, and I'm thankful she...
Consecutively, or?
We'll see when I get home. All right.
Continuously, yeah.
Continuously, yeah. And so the question I ask myself is, would we want AI picking our spouse? Yet 63% of all relationships today are through meetings on the internet. And so there's that difference between what we stated preference and demonstrated preference, right? And the bias that we bring in to every decision that we make. And so Seth Stephen Davidwich wrote a book, and I recommend everybody read it. And the book is Everybody Lies. And it is about data off the internet and what is actually true about the things that we think is true. And what you find out is that much of the bias that we carry is not actually true.
Yeah.
Right. It's a really good book. So I always pressure test what I'm thinking, because much of that stuff I find out when I pressure test it is me wishing it was true, or it's a bias that I have that's just not true. Not because I don't want to believe it, because it's just, that's not the demonstrated preference.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that shows up a lot of times in some of the results we get out of the tools, right? The way that we ask a question, right, to what Claude or whatever it might be, right, sometimes determines how it answers. It also, if you see something blatantly incorrect, which I have several times, and it's like, that doesn't seem right at all. And it says, oh, that's right. It's not right. It's the other. Well, it's like, well, it seems like you should have caught that, but yes, I'm so sorry. I would have caught it. Right. And all these sorts of things. So I think you're right. I think sometimes it's telling us not necessarily what we are really wanting to know, but maybe what we want to hear based on the way that we're asking the question.
So let's test this amongst ourselves. Maybe these language models are a reflection of ourselves. If you ask somebody something, they will tell you one of two things: A, what they think you want to hear, or B, what they want you to hear, right? One of those two things. And I always ask myself, is that what I have taught this thing to do to me?
I love that. Any other questions from online or any other in the room? All right. Well, I mean, one of the things, I'll just wrap it up real quick. I mean, we got 5 minutes. Well, that's great. Well, we have another question.
Another
Let's
question.
go. Let's get it up here. Come on up.
Yeah.
Well, in that event,
Chris, I think we're in danger of having more guests than the Christmas special.
that is true. That is true. Yeah. Yeah. Although a lot less liquor than the Christmas special. So that's excellent. Oh, hi. Name James. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks for having me on.
Take all comers.
My question was to build on something that Oliver said about, taking baby steps. I think one of the challenges is maybe with, the situation we may or may not be in with social media at the moment is that it was kind of like a silent killer for many, many years. And one of the challenges with baby steps is maybe that we don't actually see some of the dangers and the risks until they're too late. And so I was wondering, A, about that, and B, what does a world look like in which, we're already maybe breeding a generation of fairly passive citizens who are used to consuming from rectangles, and what does that look when we strip maybe even more agency away from people,
Yeah,
and make them even more passive?
That's that whole sleepwalking thing that we've talked about before.
Yeah,
isn't
I
it?
mean, there's a fair amount of sleepwalking going on, but no, I love it. And joy of live is we can't edit this bit out where I have a brain fart moment. But anyway.
We'll edit it out in the other one. Yeah, the one that ends up on the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Sorry, I've just had a complete blank with
Wendy,
James
thoughts?
asked.
Just a quick thought while you're
Yeah.
thinking. We're talking about that like that's inevitable. We're like stripping agency away from people. I think and I get that at the micro level and the organizational level, but at our organizations and our societies, like us as collective people, I think we need to think much harder about how we turn this into a time of collective human thriving. Like it seems to me that's what we should be focused on instead of just saying this is already going to happen.
Yeah, and so practically for people, right? I think it comes down to using these tools. I think, Phil, you would say maybe with intentionality or with a deliberate approach to using these particular tools, but like thinking ahead of time how I intend to use these and for what purpose, and be thoughtful about the questions that you ask, so that you don't end up getting an inshitified answer back from one of these tools.
I think the organic brain has now kicked back in again. I can remember what I was going to say. I mean, the social media thing is really interesting, isn't it? Like the harms. And the thing I think we need to remember is that this is ultimately kind of a lab experiment that went viral, right? And that's the thing. I mean, like OpenAI never thought that this was going to go away. It did. And I went to an amazing Royal Society event with university professors and so on, including the likes of Gary Marcus, who I know is a bit of a Marmite character. But it's really interesting to sort of look at like the experiment we are effectively doing on our citizens, on our customers, and so on and so forth by using some of this technology. And the feedback loops, I think, are really, really important. Like collect the telemetry, figure out where this is working, where it isn't, and act sort of decisively on it.
Excellent. Well, appreciate it, James. Thank you so much. I'll just have two microphones, I suppose. I don't know. We'll just put that right there. Well, listen. There's Daryl Carr. It's fantastic. What time is it in Australia, Daryl? Wherever you are, it's probably dark. Anyway. So anyway, listen. Again, we have never really done this live before like this. We're in a time box 30-minute window without a significant ability to edit out things that
I forget
things that we forget, or exactly. But this I think went fairly well. So again, I think we've had a really good conversation about being intentional about thinking through the context piece of this and understanding that these are tools to help us with some things, but if we don't use them in the right way, we're not going to get the answers out of them and the value out of them that we want. And I think that that's valuable for individuals as well as enterprises. But if you're interested, our podcast is Consultants Saying Things. It's a YouTube channel at Consultants Saying Things, consultantsayingthings.com. It's also up on LinkedIn pretty much all the time, or you can find it through one of us, which I think is really interesting. And we've been at it for a bit now, right? Yeah.
This lineup, I looked up next month, within 5 years on the podcast.
Of the four of us.
Four of us, yeah.
That's fantastic. And of course, it predates that by a little bit with some other folks, but this is really good. So listen, I appreciate it. Phil Yanoff, glad to see you down there. We'll get you big head next time up on the screen.
Nice.
Oliver Kronk, Wendy Keene, I'm Chris Lockhart. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see everyone on the next episode.
Thanks, guys. All right. Well, thank you very much, Consultants Saying Things, with you're experimenting with us on a brand new idea and concept that we've created together. So we'll get better at it and continue to kind of evolve. So up next, we have Architect Tomorrow with their first live podcast. If you want, we can scoot the chairs closer because we won't need to be at the screen. Are you good there? Okay. I'll just welcome the cast up and have Ali do some introductions. Give me a moment to get the screen changed.
Don't mind wherever you want to go. So surprise, I'm back. I was going to do the thing where I was going to wear what Chris is wearing, the consultant saying things hoodie, and then take it off to like differentiate. But anyway, I figured that was just faff, so I wouldn't do that.
And I'm sitting between the two of you, which, you know, feels odd being here in person rather than virtually.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks both. And thank you, Grant and Chief Architect Network for having us. I am doing the thing I don't normally do. I'm normally not scripted. Don't worry, I'm not going to be reading off the page. But given I've obviously jumped into different podcast mode, I needed some prompts to sort of remind me of what we're talking about. So yeah, thank you, Grant. Thank you, Cam, for having us. Thanks for everyone for coming. I felt the need to slightly reintroduce myself because for the last nearly 4 years I've been working for a consultancy that I'm no longer working at. So I've now actually recently struck out on my own. So I now run something called Cronk Advisory, and I'm very much working on a lot of things that have been talked about this morning around pragmatic architecture, continuous sort of adaptive governance architecture, and these things I'm calling pragmatic ecosystems and dynamic ecosystem architecture. And like I say, it builds on a lot of the conversation we've been having already. And it combines my passion for sustainability and my passion for technology. So if you want to talk to me more about that later on, I'm happy to talk to you. But speaking of ecosystems, what's amazing about this group of three of us is I'm sat here with two people who are very much part of the Architect Tomorrow ecosystem. And back in 2023, when Wendy launched her book, we had, I think it was on Zoom, but we had the four of us. There was another as well. But it's beautiful symmetry that we now have Wendy back talking to Lisa about her new book, Whatever Next, and the concepts within the book. So thank you both for coming back. And so so the tables have turned. So let's just do some quick intros for those that aren't familiar. So let's start with you, Wendy.
Just briefly, I'm really passionate about end-to-end strategy to execution, that muscle to adapt and change and help organizations to build that, underpinned by the discipline of business architecture. So Business Architecture Guild co-founder, author of Strategy to Reality, co-author of a book, Execution Challenge, and I'll leave it at that.
At least you've got an amazing career history, but it's probably quite hard to sort of do an elevator pitch version of that. But if you can try and like give us a quick intro, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm Lisa Woodall, and I'm just getting used to saying I'm an author of Whatever Next. That's a very new thing in my career. But, you know, previously, for the 30 years before that, I was working in transformation. I was working in transformation in insurance companies, in Ordnance Survey, and then into the major marketing organization of the world, WPP. And it's that experience that has made me really reflect and think on what makes transformation a success. And, you know, I've outsourced, I've offshored, I've centralized, I've migrated systems, you know, from the legacy 1980s to the now 2010s, 2020s. And I've been in rooms and had discussions and been in our ARBs. And all of that comes together in my book, Whatever Next.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And so, you know, that experience, particularly the sort of blogging that you did for about a decade, so that's like crazy number of words, crazy number of posts, like over 150 posts. What was the moment where you went, do you know what, this could be a book? What was that sort of realization?
Well, it's absolutely brilliant you mentioned the blog, because that blog came pre-AI. It was just my responses to what I was seeing happening either at work or on LinkedIn, and stuff that Wendy was posting about was triggering me to think about, you know, what do I really think about that? And stuff that, Ollie, you were posting about was making me think about that. And I just was blogging, just getting my thoughts down, publishing it on the internet and seeing what conversations came as a result of it. And as you said, Ollie, there's 156 posts, there were 100,000 words, and I thought something in this must make a book. I mean, I sat with you, Wendy, we talked about your book. That inspired me. I mean, I love the business architecture side of your book, and I thought there is something in all this lived experience which I can bring together and maybe help everybody in the technology world of enterprise architecture think a bit differently, think about being more human and more honest, because that was conversations that I was hearing in the corridors, but I wasn't hearing in the technical discussions that were happening. And that was coming through my blog posts and my reflections when I look back over those 5 years of blogging.
And so as much as this is a great book, it's really these sort of lenses that, and the sort of, I suppose, the way we can use those to lead and challenge and perhaps become more human in the transformation and not forget about that sort of people change. Sometimes it's inconvenient, isn't it, to kind of get people to kind of agree or to kind of transform and do things differently. But ultimately, it's a vital part of making transformation stick, right? And so perhaps walk us briefly through the 5 lenses of reflect, reimagine, reframe, rewire, and reconnect.
I would love to walk you through them, but I prefer you brought the book
I love it. Well,
and read about them and read about them.
I'm not going to tell you.
And read about them. But, broadly, the concepts behind the lenses are, it's not a framework, it's not a process. It's, just stepping back sometimes as architects, stepping back from the technical diagrams, stepping back from the technical conversations, and reflecting on why we are where we are. We've got a legacy estate for a reason. People that came before us have made the decisions based on the context at the time and made the decisions that they made about the technology we have. So it's very much reflecting. Then absolutely in our trade as enterprise architects, we look to the future, we look to the target state, and we reimagine what that future could be. And again, reflecting on what that could be, giving the space for that reimagining the possibilities, that's really key and important. And then we move into sort of the lens of, reframing. There's loads of things that we've done in the past. There's loads of things we could do in the future. But what is really pertinent to the business right now? What are the strategic objectives? What are we trying to hit? And how can we reframe that? And then rewire, if you get the book, if you read the book, the rewire chapter is our core lens. That's where we all spend most of our time. We are rewiring people. We're rewiring processes. We're rewiring technology. I mean, Ollie, you were part of that chapter. We talked about sustainability.
Yeah.
Wendy, you get a big mention in that chapter because it's all about business architecture. So that rewiring aspect, I think you'll all resonate with probably more than the others, because the others take us out of our comfort zone. And I sort of conclude with reconnect, which is the comfort zone that I think we need to come out of technically and into that human side and reconnect with the people that we're really here for. I mean, we can talk about AI, we can talk about cloud, we can talk about blockchain. I remember we've all forgotten that, but that was a hype thing. That was a hype thing, all of that. But why are we doing all of this stuff? We're doing it for people. And it's actually what shows up in that technology and how we reconnect with the people we're serving. And many people have started the book. Majority of people have finished the book, but there are a few that haven't got to that chapter. And it's that reconnect chapter that is the most important in the whole book.
It is vital, isn't it? Because otherwise the danger is we're in our echo chambers getting really excited about tech, but we're not bringing people on that journey. And so, Wendy, I wanted to talk to you about your endorsement, because you say that Lisa challenges us to design with intent and coherence across functions, discipline, and time. And given the sort of connections to strategy to reality, what does the book add, do you think, to the conversation that was missing?
I think this book has never been more important than right now. Just to echo, I think, a number of things that you're saying. There's so much detail and so much change, architectural, technical, delivery, AI, and this book really lifts us up. It gives us permission, it gives us space, as you said, it gives us the reminder to really take that reflection that we need to do on an ongoing basis. Is where we're going still the right place to go, right? Where are we? Does that still make sense? The reimagine, I think, is important. Like, are we thinking about the future in the right way, in the most, the biggest possible way we can imagine? And like you say, the reconnect, the human side is also so important. So this book to me really brings us back to two things: intent and human.
And can I add a bit more to that? When some people have read the book, they think, we've got enough on our plates to look at the technical side. To bring the technical challenges into our role is hard enough. To keep up with the technical trends, is impossible for anyone or any team. And now, Lisa, you're suggesting we also need to embrace the human side more. I'm sort of saying that, but I'm also saying get out and include those people in your teams more than you do today. You'll have solution architects, you'll have enterprise architects, you'll have infrastructure architects, but when you're sitting in the ARB boards, when you're sitting in the architecture design sessions, who in the room is really representing the business? And I'm not talking about the business sponsor. I'm talking about who in the room has the expertise, the knowledge, the deep-rooted understanding of the business that you can use to reflect on it. And when I started, it's a shame Jenny from Kingfisher
I'm literally
isn't
about to
still
mention
here,
Jenny, but
because
yeah.
she started as a business analyst, and we were talking this morning about how the business analysts have often been underrepresented. And the business architecture side, the business architecture, the business analysts need to be in the room. Or if they're not in the room, someone that can really bring the voices that we're not hearing, because otherwise it is an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying we need to all develop the skills to be more human-centered. I'm saying make sure you're opening your ears and your eyes to people that can bring that specialism into your teams.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Jenny, because I saw Jenny Wilson, who was with us until just now, had to run off for a board meeting. She talked on another podcast episode of Architect Tomorrow, talking about architects as being enablers, not gatekeepers. And I think the Reconnect lens in the book kind of allows us to sort of address that head on somewhat.
Yeah, and I mean that Reconnect chapter is the one that probably represents the last part of my career at WPP. That was when I was out there looking at how to deploy the digital workplace in a more human-centered way.
Yep.
And I was lucky to have a researcher on my team, talking about bringing in different skills. She was a researcher of behaviors, and we sort of touched on a bit of that this morning. So she wasn't from a researcher of the business or technology. It was very much about human behaviors. And she really showed up and demonstrated for me the power of a day in the life of actually getting out into the organization, watching what people are doing, listening to what people are saying, seeing what they were thinking before they opened their laptop, what their sort of impressions were when they were using their laptop, and what they did at the end. You can't capture that in a requirements document. You actually have to get out there. You have to spend time observing and just see the behaviors.
Yep.
And even if you just do that once a year, just get out there once a year and see what people are experiencing in their work, in their day job, in the high streets. I think you'd think about your technology challenges differently. I know I did.
So I want to move us on to the reframe lens and to you, Wendy. So there's a lot in here about surfacing the unsaid. So things like, in a room full of senior architects, chief architects, how you get people to name the uncomfortable truths. And so I wanted to kind of talk to you, Wendy, about where do you see the emotion and politics derailing the best designed sort of architectures and strategies?
And to quote one of the things you say in the book, Lisa says, how change feels to people matters as much as what it does. I don't think we spend nearly enough time, and also too late, focusing on that change, right? But I to answer your question, Oliver, I think there's a couple places where that gets introduced. One is when we don't create real, authentic forums and spaces for people to dialogue and ask questions and sort of voice what they're thinking. Lisa, you kind of talk about the iceberg, and when you don't have that, all that stuff is sort of lurking below the surface, right? Sometimes change management, even when we do it, it feels very very mechanical, right? Like we're going through steps. So like that real authentic forum. The other place I think we have challenges is the organizational structures and motivations of leaders, which can create really siloed political decision making. That's a bigger issue, but I think it happens there too.
I'm glad you brought up the sort of siloed piece, because I think this is where some of the discussions we've had on the podcast about ecosystems is really important, right? There's this fractal thing going on, I think, in architecture that we perhaps overlook, which is, we sit within teams that have an ecosystem. We sit them within a department. We then sit within an organization that has a set of ecosystems. Then we sit in a business ecosystem. So I think there's a whole, and I think the thing about AI and the sort of accelerated pace changes, all of those things are disrupting the ecosystem in different ways that we need to tune into. And often they're not just because of technology, they're because of the human response to some of those things. So when we think about rewiring how organizations work, we can't ignore those ecosystem dynamics, right, Lisa? So you then sort of talk a bit about this in your rewire lens, don't you? Like going beyond the enterprise boundary.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating, isn't it? In enterprise architecture, we've often been at the forefront of designing the new organizations, what we're going to outsource because it's not our core competency, where that should be placed around the world, offshore maybe, which platforms we're going to bring in from major vendors, Salesforce, ServiceNow. That is all part of an ecosystem. And even this morning, before the event, we were talking about the design of our organizations. And for me, listening, I felt that felt very internal to the organizations we sit in. And actually, it's not about designing for our organization. It's about designing for the ecosystem that we sit within and being sure of the consequences, not just for us, our teams, our processes and our systems, but also for the teams, processes and systems of the organizations that are part of our supply chain, because they're often thought of last. I mean, to your point, when you bring these people in, it's when you're going live with something. And that ecosystem and how that all fits together all has to work seamlessly for us to design the best organizations. So that ecosystem is really important.
So I'm going to quote someone else from a previous episode as well. So Ron Kersick, who I know is a mutual friend of ours. Do go and check out Ron. He does featuring architectures. And on the episode, we talked about featuring architectures. Put the teeth back in. Featuring architectures. He talked about it's not your ecosystem. You cannot build it. You cannot design it, but you can design your position. So you can make choices about how you position yourself in that ecosystem. And it's a different way of thinking, isn't it? And this sort of transformation is something you live rather than, something that's always within your control.
Yeah, and I think, that was, if I look back, and I'm sure many of you, if you really look back over the last 20 or 30 years of the work you've been doing, you will recognize those conversations, those meetings that happened, those post-implementation reviews maybe, that would have highlighted the engagement of stakeholders early or too late. And it's often those ecosystem stakeholders that we've involved too late. And I think the other thing, going back to the iceberg that Wendy, you mentioned, was we're enterprise architects. We join the dots. We see things that other people in the organization don't see because we have the privilege to work across the silos. Yeah. We are also in a position where we can go deeper. We can pick up the signals that maybe others aren't picking up because we're not as siloed in our thinking. And I think the real message for us to be more human and more honest in transformation is to turn the volume up on those signals, those hunches, that intuition that you're getting, and pay more attention to that, because you'll find that you'll be working with your team better, your team will be designing better solutions, and more importantly, you'll probably find the engagement with the stakeholders that are ultimately paying for everything are actually more brought in to it because you come across more human too.
And I wanted to bring in the other ecosystem that's often ignored, right? And increasingly in our worlds that are incredibly digitized and virtualized and abstracted from the real world, there's another set of ecosystems that we need to think about. We touched a little bit on human, the human dimension. There's this human societal ecosystem, right, that all of our organizations play into. And then obviously underpinning everything is the natural ecosystem that so conveniently often we try and ignore. And we are fundamentally all part of that natural ecosystem. Techno-optimists sort of amazing visions to perhaps upload our minds to the cloud or something apart. Fundamentally we can't ignore that. And I think we're going to sort of start facing into some fundamental limits to some of the technological progress that we are getting very excited about. Like, there are only so many data centers we can build around the world. There's only so much energy that we can, not even generate, like distribute it from generation to where the data centers are. So, fundamentally, so ecosystem thinking is also starting to think about what are the ripple effects of some of these decisions. Now, maybe it's not an individual project that's going to make the difference, but collectively, as architects, we're making all these choices and these decisions that fundamentally impact sort of sustainability in its broader sense. And so, Wendy, I know this is something that you and I are both passionate about. And so, where perhaps do you see, some of the ability to kind of use some of this sort of language to sort of try and get broader sort of understanding of what the consequences are of some of our architecture and strategy choices?
Yeah. I mean, the business architecture, in fact, quoting the Guild, a business architecture represents the scope of an organization and the ecosystem in which it operates, right? That's not me, that's overall.
Yep.
But I think those constructs are easily extensible. And they give us that view because we can then understand what are the implications. For example, something like a value network showing the interplay between our organization and third-party providers, right? And the value that's exchanged, we can use the same construct and map on it materials and energy.
So,
right?
like circular economy sort of type thinking.
Exactly. And also, extending a value stream. And if we're a bank, instead of having acquire loan, like working with partners to make it acquire home, and then that same value stream capability construct is getting people to really work together.
Ollie, it sounds as if you need to write a book.
Yeah.
You touched on sustainability in
Yeah.
my book, and
Yeah.
I don't claim to be in that space at all, but there's enough between what you two have both said that Wendy's written a book. I've written a book.
I can see where
I
you're going. I
think
can
it's
see where you're
time
going
you
now.
write the book.
See where you're going.
I think it's
Yeah, I
time.
mean, I think ultimately that I'd love to do that. And I think with the experience I've gained from talking to the amazing, network and community that Architect Tomorrow has now become over the last 6 years that we've been running it, just like drawing on everyone's, it's a bit like what Grant was saying about CAN, right? Like, you just become so much smarter by talking to smart people from different parts of the world and different industries. And I think there's definitely, I guess the benefit of going on this journey is, as much as the enterprise architect looks across the organization and sees where there's silos and where there's gaps, in my work I've been doing the last few years, I've been able to see the gaps between industries and the potential for, Jeremy sat in the room here, and Jeremy from Dear Smith, and one of the amazing things that we talked about a few months ago is like looking at industrial heat and, or data center heat. Could we take some of the stuff we're doing with servers and like be cleverer about the kind of waste heat and stuff like that? Some of this thinking that we're applying in our day-to-day operations to be more sustainable, we can totally look at the tech world as well, like kind of reimagining what waste is. Well, actually waste is an opportunity to perhaps monetize and create a circular economy sort of stream for the business. It's just different thinking. And so that's what's been really exciting for me. And I think if I do write a book, it will be about pulling those sort of threads together around kind of how do we think broader than just, because we do have a danger of having silos, not even just within departments and companies, but silos within industries that aren't kind of working enough with each other. And to solve the big problems that we're facing, we're going to have to get more creative, I think. Cool. Do we have any, Grant, I'm just looking at you for time. We've got about 5 minutes or so, is that right? Yeah. So I'd love to open up to the audience at this point, questions either to Lisa about the book or anything else that we've kind of
Well,
talked
the
about.
question did come in online, which was, could our two authors, soon to be three,
God.
nudge, wink, but do it, compare and contrast your two novels, right? They came out within about a month of one another. Let's share a little bit
No, I
about
would
them.
correct that. They came out 2 years
The internet
apart.
said it was a month ago, so it was a month ago. I'm sorry, a month between each other. That's what they said.
No, that's
But it's
2022
the
for Wendy, and so yeah, about 3 years difference. So that's someone perhaps using an LLM to give them a question. But anyway, I also noticed Daryl. It's great to see Daryl on screen. He's been commenting and everything. Daryl is one of the co-hosts of Architect Tomorrow going forward. That was a recent announcement. So, but yeah, but maybe the question about compare and contrast between the two books would be a good one to talk about.
Okay, I'll go first. So I had the pleasure of reading Wendy's book before I wrote mine. And I really liked the fact that it really brought alive business architecture and the importance of business architecture to drive home strategy execution. And some of the approaches to how you can set up business architecture, what works, what doesn't work, and the importance of driving that execution home. That's what I would say I took from Wendy's book. My book is more a lived experience. It's more someone's reflections on living through the last 30 years of transformation and some of the stories that I personally tell about some of the programs and projects I've worked on. So mine's more of a lived memoir, and I think Wendy's would be more of the go-to book for business architecture in strategy execution.
I can't say anything better. It's like they're companions, right?
If I could add woot woot, that's helpful. I hope that's helpful.
But do we have any questions in the room?
Yes, we have one right here.
Charles.
Charles
Cool.
Betts.
Yep. You want me on camera, huh? Sure.
It's an exclusive. I've got Charles Betts on Architect Tomorrow, everyone. This is
Not
great.
sure if I'm going to get through there safely without taking the camera down. Where should I stand? All right.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think a lot of us are thinking about human in the loop and thinking about maintaining human intent in these increasingly AI-infused architectures. And the name that keeps coming to mind is Lisanne Bainbridge. And the paper is Ironies of Automation. Familiar?
We're going to add that to my reading list for sure. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's one to look at because she, UK human factors thought leader in datamation in 1960s, proposed that there was a fundamental issue with the idea that we will automate and then leave humans in the loop to handle the most critical issues, because the human starts to lose focus, lose context, and just at the moment the automation breaks, the human is unprepared.
It's like the self-driving car thing, right? Where all of a sudden you're handed over control and it's like, what? I now need to drive?
And this was exactly, there was a flurry around this with the Boeing 737 MAX, which was absolutely the perfect example of the situation. So I'm wondering if from a business architecture perspective, there's any thoughts on this, if you've started to work on these kinds of things or look at them?
So I think human in the loop is vital for all the reasons that we've talked about this morning. And I think I can't necessarily answer the question, but what I can say is enterprise architects have a role to play in slowing down maybe some of the hype and potential that AI could deliver, to allow that human side to catch up. And enterprise architects could, I'm not saying they will, but they could fuel it to move faster, the technology to move faster than those humans that we're delivering for can keep up. So I think we've got a role to play in slowing down the speed of the technology and helping our colleagues, our customers also embrace it. The figures this morning, 1.5 trillion being spent on AI. How much of that is going into the technology side of bringing AI in, and how much of that is going into that human capability side? I would probably say it's 98% on the technology and 2% on the human side. And I think we've got to correct that, or we're in danger of what you're actually declaring there.
So I'd love to signpost before I hand to you, Wendy, is like the sleepwalking risks sort of thinking, particularly augmentation fatigue, right? We talk a lot about humans being in the loop, but imagine a story where it becomes almost like a factory production line where you're staring at the production line looking for the anomaly. How interesting are some of these roles when you take the friction out? Like there was a really interesting post recently about someone talking about software engineering. How interesting is it essentially to debug the code that comes out of an AI rather than actually get the dopamine hit from doing the coding yourself in the first place? So there's some really interesting things here that we aren't thinking about because we're just looking at the immediate, oh, this is amazing. We're not taking a step back and going, well, hang on, what happens to my team and their skills and their desire to kind of actually engage in the work if we've taken out the bit that actually was the most exciting?
And I think that's the whole point of the lenses too. There's a lot of things we can do, and this conversation is so focused at a micro level, honestly, that we need to come up and say, macro, does this make sense where we're going?
Grant, how are we doing?
We're very good. Yeah, I think we can claim success.
Cool.
What do you guys
I'll wrap us up then quickly.
What's that?
I'll just wrap us up quickly.
Yeah, let's do it. Wrap
Awesome.
us up.
So yeah, look, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening and turning. And if you like this, like I say, there are well over 60 episodes now on various different topics. Sustainability is often a big theme. Next week, we're going to launch something that I've been working with the community called the Regenerative Architecture Principles. About 11 or 12 principles that I think as architects we can start to think about and act as counterbalance to some of the narrative around some of the topics we've been talking about today, around kind of making sure it's the well-balanced sort of future that we're building. So yeah, an architect tomorrow is like I say, all about learning from really smart people, not always architects, different adjacent roles, different disciplines. And so, yeah, if you've enjoyed this, do check that out. And increasingly, we'll be popping up places like Cannes and other events. So, yeah, thank you very much again, Grant, for having us.
And thank you. I mean, we're trying something new here. It doesn't work perfectly, but I think pretty damn good. 70 people online agree.
Awesome.
4 out of 5 dentists. There's the one that's just a little picky.
And yeah,
but
thanks for joining.
Beautiful job, folks. Thank you for kicking us off.
Thank you.
So now, because we're doing this for 3.5 hours, we're going to have the room quietly take a break away from the stage area, and we're going to continue with a special online edition. Everyone's welcome to stay if you'd like. I'm just offering that if you'd like a break, now's a good time to take one if you're in the room. And we're going to bring a good friend, Michael Butts, who is a talent expert. He's the CEO at Birchworks. We're going to bring Randy Potter into the stage. And we're going to bring Michael Fulton, who's been leading the Cannes conversation on talent for months now. We'll do a little bit of chair repositioning too now, since we'll kind of recenter on the camera. But I'm very excited for this conversation. And I also invite our virtual Cannes members to join us. Now's the time to log in and get a chance to chat with Michael, and Randy. And let's have a good conversation about talent. So come on up, our panelists, and we'll do a quick introduction, and then we'll get going. So we want to do a next there. Yep, you got it. You can just click anywhere on the slide. Yeah. All right. So while we're getting situated, I'll work on the camera a little bit here, and we'll also bring Michael Butts into the environment here, which is right there. Just click Add to Stage. We're learning a little of the tech here. Hold on one moment. There he is. There's Mr. Michael Butts. Great to have you, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a little bit easier. We're gonna do it that way and do one more pivot here, and we'll be ready to go. All right. I just have to hit one more button. There it is. Great. So, oops. There we are. Now people get a sense of what we're talking about, and I'm going to pull this one off the stage too. So thanks for the quick transition, everybody. Maybe one more change. Let's see if we can get everyone a little bigger. All right. So who are we missing? Are we missing anybody? No, that's perfect. You guys are in frame. Great. Awesome. Let's kick it off. We also will have some guests. I see Sandesh is on the line, but first let's just frame this up a little bit. Michael, I'm going to have you steer us, given this is your passion and profession. And we also have some questions over here that might help us kind of spark our thinking. So maybe you can tee off a little State of the Union, and then we can bring in some folks to chat with us.
Yeah, sounds great, Grant. Well, nice to see everybody. Great to be here. And I think the opening phrase that we can kick this topic off with is that, things from a talent perspective have never changed this fast before, but yet they'll never change this slow again. There has been, I would say, a major shift as it relates to architecture, design, and engineering. And I'm happy to dive in on some experience share and what we've seen at Birchworks as the roles have evolved and how workforce really orchestration has become a primary topic and board level priority for many enterprise organizations, mid-market, and also private equity. So looking forward to talking with our two esteemed panelists today on their experience and on the topic. And what I'll kind of lead with is first, just maybe opening it up a little bit and, talking about, where we've been just the last 5 years. So maybe close the aperture just a bit and look at the last 5 years. Coming from the pandemic, we saw a very strong demand cycle in 21 and 22, some of the strongest demand that we've seen over the last 30 years. And that demand was really a response to drive, a more, data-driven organization to be able to scale and build more righteous ETL, more, foundational infrastructure to support really a more digital-first, platform capability. And then, starting in 2023, we saw interest rates start to increase. We saw a lot of uncertainty be introduced into the market, both geopolitically and otherwise. And there were layoffs starting in the tech industry. And those layoffs continue to proliferate across all industries. So it was an industry agnostic layoff cycle. And we saw demand or hiring and or job switching go down exponentially in 23 and 24. Last year was kind of the combination of those 4 years. We saw demand starting to come back, but only in very niche categories. We believe that there are riches and niches, and we saw extreme demand in specific domain and industry niche areas. And that demand has really accelerated through the second half of 2025 into 2026. In those specific domain areas that we can double click on today as well. So wanted to set the table and provide a little backdrop just from an experience perspective at Birchworks, from an executive search and consulting perspective on where we've seen demand, and looking forward to diving deeper into the topic today. But I'll turn it over to my two panelists and maybe ask their experience over the last few years and what they've seen, both from their own personal marketability and how maybe they've been courted for opportunities, and maybe how they've also seen some changes in what they're looking to hire for to scale their organizations.
Yeah, so maybe I'll take a first crack at that. For those I haven't met, my name is Mike Fulton. I'm enterprise architect at Coke, but I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Ohio State. And so I've seen this personally. I've seen this journey within my organizations. I've been in a few different organizations over the 5-year time frame that we're talking about. And then I've seen this from a faculty perspective, the impact on students. And it's been a really, really interesting time frame as we think about the pandemic and how we were all remote, and all of a sudden we now had a talent pool that was global in nature. We could reach out and grab the best people anywhere in the world. But then we had this wave of return to office that really started to contract the talent pools once again. We started looking for people sitting in specific locations and asking individuals to relocate. And I think that had a big sort of challenge to the market and people's mobility, because they realized, having experienced the pandemic, that they really could do a lot of the work that we as enterprise architects do from anywhere, and do that very, very successfully. They've been forced to for several years. And so why should I leave the beautiful beach in Florida or the great Midwest that I love the culture and my family's there, to go work in Minneapolis or go work in, I know, Grant, I was picking on you, or Chicago or wherever else it might be, right? So we've seen a lot of those different dynamics, but then I think you also hit on that idea of data, right? And I feel like we've been talking about how data is the foundation and it's so important, but even today in the AI age where data is even more important than it's ever been, I still feel like we don't have it right. And so do we have the right talent out there? Do people understand how to fix the data problems that we have in organizations? I think that continues to be a little bit of a challenge, but yeah, there's so much we could kind of jump off and dig into on this topic. But it's definitely been a very dynamic market over the last several years. And we're just seeing that continue as we see more demand for those true experts and masters, as we were talking about in some of the earlier conversations here at SwitchOn and Can today. But we've also seen at the lower end of the market, the people that are a little bit more novice, those entry-level people really struggling in a way they never have before, struggling to find jobs when they come out of college or when they try to find that first job. It's a lot of different dynamics in the marketplace right now. So maybe I'll shut up and let Randy talk a little bit.
Thanks, Mike. And I don't have much to add to that. It's hard to even remember back to 2021. We're kind of second round of COVID hit early 2021 with a particularly viral strain, and kind of we did a sort of, I wouldn't call it a temporary lockdown, but everybody got cautious again. So the whole idea of working remotely continued to be thumbs up, no problem. And, I would say one of the bigger disruptions, I would agree, is the kind of forcing people back to a headquarters or, a major office. I know it's happening in a lot of different companies. I know that, I used to live near Bentonville, Arkansas. And, the big company in Bentonville said, yep, if you're going to work here, you're going to have to live here. And so a lot of people left the company, a lot of really good people, because they didn't want to make that move. I think the other part that's happened that's a lot more interesting in the last 2 years is that the whole, I think we're probably going to talk about AI here in a little bit, but that's been the biggest shift that I've seen. And that one's kind of going crazy. And I've got one daughter who is still in college. So I try to talk to her once a week to see what she's doing that's new. And so she's not a computer science person, although she's wildlife biology, but she had to take a course in Python for statistical biology. And she found out she loves it. And I said, well, you need to stick with it. That'll definitely differentiate you in your field. And so now I find her doing all kinds of, she's talking about tools and AI that I didn't hear about it, and I'm kind of pretty close to it. So I think staying close to, the young folks, we talked about that a little bit earlier in one of the prior sessions, is that they're learning a lot of things new really fast, but they don't really know how to use it at an enterprise level or even an organizational level. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to help them with that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll throw out to your point, Randy. One of the really cool things that the university I'm a part of, Ohio State, has done over the last year or so, we've introduced a major university-wide initiative to drive AI fluency across the university. And when we talk about AI fluency, what do we really mean? We mean that in 3 years, because we started this a year ago, every single student that comes out of Ohio State with a degree will understand not just a little bit about the technology that goes into AI, but much, much more importantly, how do they use AI in the context of the work that they've signed up to do in their job, right? So I love that example of your daughter needing to know a little bit of the tech in biology, because that's what is going to be needed in every single field. It sounds kind of weird, but it's going to be what we have to have in every single field across our entire workforce.
That's right, Mike.
I'll just add one more thing,
Yep.
Michael, before we go on, is that I think the curriculum, and it sounds like Mike Fulton's already on it, but the curriculums in the colleges are going to have to change. I think you're still going to have practice level focuses, but in every one of those, I think becoming an entrepreneur and a self-starter is going to become a very, very important talent and capability to have coming out of college. And I think because we don't know what jobs are going to look like in 4 years.
Right.
So they just need to be able to adapt to whatever is coming. Entrepreneurs tend to do that better than most.
Yep.
Well, maybe
Great
I'll throw
point,
it back
Randy.
to you, Michael, because one of the things that you and I have talked about, right, is how in your business you're seeing from your customers' demands the evolution of jobs today, right? I remember last time you and I talked about how much demand you're seeing for forward deployed engineers in your space. Maybe you could talk just a little bit about that. And I think then Grant's got maybe a question or two from the
Well, I
audience.
got an idea that we could have Sandesh jump in, who's joined us remotely. So Michael, will you collect your thoughts? And Sandesh, maybe you can ask the first question of the three online after Michael responds.
Sure. Hey, hello everyone.
Hey,
My name is
Sandesh.
Again, I'm based out of Chicago, CAN member out of Chicago as well. I remember we had this conversation, Michael, sometime back in our Texas event last year, right? The thing that Randy mentioned is the adaptive change. The new talent that's coming in the market might not be ready and might not have seen the bigger picture. That's typically the new talent fail to see that. How you can maintain or enable that culture within the new talent coming in the market where they start seeing the bigger picture,
Could
bigger
you
value.
speak up a little bit more or maybe closer to the mic? I'm not sure, but it's hard to hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Is it better? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So the question is how we can make sure we enable the talent that's coming in to be market ready, seeing the biggest picture, because as a technologist, we always think that the technology is driving the business, but that's not always the case, right? It's business driving the technology. So how we can make that talent or like these new students coming in the market to actually look at the bigger picture, look at the business value coming out of their technology investments or the skills they're bringing into the market.
That's a great question, Sandesh, and Mike and Randy. Thanks for those insights. Those were fantastic. And I think we're, to answer your question and to kind of pull together what both Mike and Randy shared, is that the technology is changing in the enterprise. And I want to double click on this because I think it's very important in how it's going to impact talent from this point on. There are some significant signals that are happening right now in the enterprise, and this will continue to mature across the small to medium-sized business segment and across private equity and the portcos. And I want to provide a term here, and it's called interoperable infrastructure. For so long as architects and engineers, we've built really solid legacy infrastructure, and we've seen different evolutions along that path, whether it was going on-prem to off-prem to co-located, building an edge for elasticity and latency, doing a lift and shift for the cloud. All of this infrastructure is in place today. But what is a monumental change is the introduction of the frontier LLM. And this is the next semantic layer that is going to support an agentic capability at the enterprise. And this LLM semantic layer introduction is sitting on top of legacy infrastructure. So we need to think about the architecture and design a little bit now differently. And we're already seeing how Anthropic, OpenAI, et cetera, are building their channel partnership ecosystems right now, very similar to the hyperscalers did, 10, 15 years ago. So we are at the cusp of a very significant shift. And what that shift is going to drive is a change in the type of resources organizations are looking for. We have seen a 375% increase in demand, 375% for a skill titled forward deployed engineer. The forward deployed engineer, in very simplistic terms, think about it as a Venn diagram. It's an engineer who understands technology, who understands analytics, and then who also understands business. And in the middle is really this core skill category. Organizations are going to be, in certain capacities, doing more with less. And they really want to enable more higher productivity producers, but maybe less of them in specific areas inside their funnel, whether it's technology and building interoperable infrastructure to support an agentic capability and connecting that capability to a business use case, or even, from a operations perspective within the funnel, finding low value activities that can be automated to accentuate those higher value activities. And that's really what's driving business demand today. So individuals who are positioned to be able to be able to build interoperable infrastructure, and then B, be able to connect the agentic capability to a desired business outcome are very, very highly sought after skill categories. The other thing I want to double click on real quick, Mike, because I think this will be interesting and it kind of aligns to where we're also seeing an extreme amount of demand is RLHF. I'm not sure, have you heard the term RLHF? So it's it's reinforcement learning and human feedback. So what's happening right now is that the experts, whether it's biology, whether it's a CPA, whether it's an MD, whether it's a a very astute lawyer. I'm at a conference here today at the Willis Tower talking about this. The human experts are being brought in to train the model itself, and this is called fine tuning. And it's helping to elevate the level of intelligence that currently exists on the frontier enterprise LLMs and on the small language models that sit on top of them within the specific organization. So it's a very exciting time, but these are the skill categories of the future that are driving tremendous demand based on AI.
Yeah, and so maybe I'll go back to Sandesh's question on the other end of the spectrum, right? Because I think Michael really nailed the technical kind of more high end of the market. For those folks that are a little bit younger, that are a little bit newer coming into the market, obviously it's a really, really challenging time for those folks. And one of the things I like to think about when I talk to people that are kind of in that spot is it's actually, to me, not a lot of difference than how we actually think about the AI itself and what the AI needs to be really good. What have we been talking a lot about the last couple of days related to what AI needs to be really good? It needs not just the content, but it needs context, right? And I think when I think about kind of advising someone that's new into the workforce, the advice I always give them is don't just do your job. That's your content, right? You want to be really good at your job and your content, but you also have to understand the context of what's going on around you, right? And so what I found historically is that the IT field is a very, very sort of siloed career path in most instances. You start as a developer and you get promoted to a senior developer, and then you lead a team and you go up the stack, or you're in infrastructure and you start and you kind of go up the infrastructure stack, or you're in operations or in project management. But you don't see a lot of people that move in between the silos, right? And a lot of times people don't move around until even they get up into the C-suite, when they actually have to have understanding of everything. But the power really is that when you understand what's going on around you, you understand that context of, as a developer, what does it mean to hand that code over to somebody that has to support that 24/7, right? You write a lot better code when you sat in that operations seat and actually picked up a phone call in the middle of the night, right? Because you got that context.
Yeah, Mike,
So-
that's kind of, that's the forward deployed, quote unquote, nomenclature. It was deemed by the Palantir CEO, forward deployed. It's a military term, because what it's doing is it's breaking down silos. And we are seeing those silos starting to come down. And the demand, and what's really marketable is individuals, to your point, Mike, who have more of the business acumen and sense of understanding not just what to do, but why they're doing it. And that is becoming very much, a key to what organizations, continue to hire for. And these silos are breaking down faster than we've seen in the past in terms of software engineering, the traditional SDLC, infrastructure, data engineering. A lot of these are becoming kind of blended, because the reality is you can do so much more vibe coding, and you have so much more capability at your fingertips that, it doesn't have to be as a traditional hands-on keyboard role as it used to be. And so again, you're finding that this Venn diagram, I think it's the best way to describe it, of technology, analytics, and business is really coming together, and having attributes in all three of those categories are really what organizations are looking for in the future and currently.
Anything to add to that, Randy?
Nothing to add to that. I guess as a last thought, I would say that in addition to being, when we're talking about talent, looking for talent, trying to develop talent, in addition to that entrepreneurial spirit, and, it's all about curiosity, learning, and experimenting. And we've heard that from multiple different sessions today, but I would just encourage that both in terms of the talent supply. If you're looking, you need to be doing and experimenting. And if you're hiring, You want to hire the people that are already doing it, and not just ready to learn. That's it.
I love that, Randy. Mike, I'm gonna add one quick thing there too. We talked about experimenting and intellectual curiosity. Like Mike, I also teach at the University of Chicago Booth, their CAIO program, and then their DSI, Data Science Institute program. And one thing that we're recommending is that our students start to pick up a MacBook Mini and use OpenClaw and start to tinker and just experiment. And many of our students are, they are building their own agents on OpenClaw within a MacBook Mini. So it's a very protected environment, and it's not exposed to any outside corporate email, etc. And it's a wonderful place to learn. And, Randy, I think to your point, those are the individuals that we're finding really start to pick up momentum in the market. And organizations who are hiring are okay if they maybe haven't had professional enterprise experience, but they really like to hear about what they're doing personally to tinker and learn about building agentic capabilities.
Yeah, and I think for one final thought to kind of close things out here, obviously we talked a lot about talent, how the market looks, and kind of our own individual journeys as architects and what we need to do to maintain our own talent. But I would also offer up that all of you, if you're watching this show, you're probably an architect, you're probably considered an expert in your organization. We owe it to the next generation to reach out and help them navigate this journey. For those that are coming up behind us, this is a really, really challenging time. So find someone in your organization or someone fresh out of college that you can maybe offer a helping hand to, offer a little bit of advice to, help coach, help mentor. Those folks need us more than ever. And all of you on the line have something really cool to offer them. So I urge you to share that as you go along the way. So Grant, I think we're going to turn it back over to you as we wrap up.
That sounds great. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you, Michael. Sorry, I just took you off screen by accident, but I really appreciate the conversation you just led us through. Sandesh, thank you for joining us. And there we go. Now I'm on camera. Hi. We'll get ready for our next speakers. So thank you guys so much. If you could pull the chairs over.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Very cool. Thank you very much for being here. All right. So I'll take you back to the agenda here so you can see what's happening. There's some of the things we discussed just now. And with more needless animations, could you click for me? That'd be great. Okay, so here's what's up next. We have From Architecture to Advantage with my good friend Rich Corbridge, and I'm so excited to have him here. He's the CIO at Sergo. Am I saying CGRO? It'd be really helpful if I learned how to say that, wouldn't it? I've only known this for what, a couple years? Come on, I could do a little better. Maybe I'll just invite you up to introduce yourself, and we'll get rolling.
Thank you very much. Good to see everybody. Good to see everybody in the room and online. I think I might need a mouse at some point, though, from a slide point of view. There are one or two slides. So as Grant kindly invited me up, I'm Rich Corbridge. I'm the CIO of CGRO. CGRO is a relatively strange company, he says, in a way, not being too offensive about my own organization. It's a FTSE 20 organization, £20 billion worth of assets, live in 8 markets across UK and Europe. 400 people work there, though. So to be a FTSE 20-ish with £20 billion worth of assets across Europe, but only 400 people work there, it can feel a little bit odd sometimes. And we're trying to do something quite different, he says, looking to see whether I can make the slides move. I might be doing this without slides. Cool. It's okay. I can wing it and manage all sorts.
There we are. Should click advance now. Sorry about that, Rick.
It's all right, don't worry. All.
Forward or back?
There we go. Cool. So as I mentioned, slightly different organization. Property as a industry is an industry that probably feels quite proud of the fact it hasn't done tech stuff. Property feels like it's an industry that relies on deals that are done in the pub and the black book and relationships. And therefore, coming into property, we are the largest landlord of data centers, for example, as a technology leader, if I'm not being too big-headed, who believes in architecture because of this gentleman's influence on my career and life in some ways, and also just wants to make sure that we make the right decisions. So a wee while ago, the organization decided that it was going to look at what it needed to do to transform. What do we need to do to be different? What do we need to do to make sure that growth is what we are about? Our amazing chief exec has set as a challenge, which is, whilst we've got 20 billion pounds worth of assets now, by 2030, can we have 40 billion pounds of assets and still be exactly the same size in headcount? You ain't got a chance of doing that unless you become technology capable. And as I mentioned, it's not an industry that's proud of being technology capable. So we came up with some ideas. And the reason when Grant and I spoke about this presentation, we came up with the title, is the ideas were about how do we make sure that architecture and enterprise architecture and the stuff that people in this room are wonderfully expert at doing is the thing that starts this off. So imagine going into a room with a bunch of execs that have been proud of not using technology at all. They've been property experts their entire life. They run 20 billion pounds worth of assets and start wobbling on about architecture. Funnily enough, they thought we were going to rebuild buildings and architect those, not architecture as you see behind me. So boy, did we have a challenge. From the very beginning, trying to change language. From the very beginning, talking about benefits and growth and linking those things together. So we took the opportunity to start to bring some real architectural views of the world into what we were doing. A business architecture capability model. So I've just mentioned already these people that were like, what's architecture, what's technology? And now I'm baffling on about a BACM. But actually, it landed really well. It landed as a way of mapping what's the stuff that CxO does to be the best, the most extraordinary property firm in UK and Europe. So we got set a challenge after we'd landed this information, which was, what's the new tech that's out there that you can go and get us that we can do differently? What are over the last 12 months can we do to try and get to a 5-year outlook that takes us through the sort of the view of change? Now you'll notice I've been talking for 4 or 5 minutes and not used the 2 initials that have been practically in every sentence so far today. And that's because where we've landed is not just about artificial intelligence. It's about how do we orchestrate the solutions that we have or are building towards to truly change our organization and hopefully influence the industry itself. So being able to take that our business architecture capability model. This is everything that we do. We're 125 years old. We have never written down what it is that makes us good at what we do until this. It's horrific, terrifying and horrific. And what is really quite fascinating is when you work across 8 different markets from a cultural point of view, you go to Germany and say, this is what you do for portfolio management. The Germans go, it's definitely not what we do for portfolio management. And it's not called portfolio management. It's called something else. And then you go, where's HR on this? And they go, well, you're not even mentioned us, what you're doing. And I'm annoying Grant by moving around and he's having to grab the camera. I'll try and stand still. So landing this with them was hard at first and got there in the end. But then we made it prettier. Oh, can we go back a couple? So then we made it prettier. So if you go back 2 slides, the gold, bronze, silver one. One more. So what we did then was take that BACM. We took the German view, the French view, the Polish view, the Czech view, applied it, tried to get it to something that most people wouldn't argue with. Became this. We then went around the business and the leadership of our business and said, what are the things that are gold, silver, bronze, and don't matter that make us extraordinary? Because that's how we'll decide what we need to do first to be the best organization we possibly could. So not only did we get our colored pencils out and make it look prettier, we actually got to understand what our leadership felt were the most important things for us to do. What are we, 10 months later, this picture still exists. Every time it gets put up on a screen, somebody argues about what color something should be on there though. So whilst it's great that we now got there, it is a moving feast and will be forever probably. But that got us to these what we call gold capabilities. We then asked the 19 most senior people in the organization to vote for the ones that are on there that they want to tackle first. We took those through, and I'm going to come on to it in a bit more detail, at a bit of an initial process discovery, not what tech can we deploy, what is it that we could do better at a human point of view. And that's why this morning when I asked the human question, being annoying for the presenter a little bit to some degree, that's where that was grounded in, because what we found with property people who live in their black book, have done property, have done construction, development, run amazingly huge buildings, is they don't really yet, in most cases, get what AI and tech is going to do. But actually, by being able to map the process, we can now map the value and the way we'll change stuff. So these ended up being the top 8 things we're going to do. So deciding where to invest when you've got £200 million to invest is a big deal for investors, for shareholders. So how can we use technology to do that? And therefore, how do we understand where to allocate our capital? Business planning and being able to forecast in this ever-changing world that we live in, what matters across property is huge. Property is an industry that is exceptionally volatile when geopolitical things are happening that are unpredictable. So you can imagine my world right now is fun. I've actually aged 5 years in the last 12 months, somebody said yesterday. Data management, and actually how do you take 125 years of paper plans and digitize them so that they can be used by AI? So if you look at a big Amazon warehouse, what the documents are that actually are legally make that a warehouse are in the thousands. If somebody's changed the lock on the door, often they've gone to the catalog item, they've taken a photo and they've put that into the document shed of that building. When we come to sell that building, if all those documents aren't present, we can lose millions of pounds on the value of a building. So applying understanding, applying enterprise architecture principles to each of these areas has taken us to a place now where we know what we can and should do to be better. We know how much effort it will take to be better, and we know what the value is in doing that. A 125-year-old company that had never written down how it worked, been super successful, and now is starting to write down how it does what it does. Yeah. And this slide is a slide that has caused much merriment and amusement in our organization, because it's my boss drew this slide. Well, he drew it on a piece of paper and then said, Rich, can you turn it into PowerPoint? But my boss drew this slide, and basically his view of the world is this is what we now call our business operating platform, or platform for short. It is not a technology platform. And technologists in the team find it confusing and difficult to explain that this is platform without it being tech. These are the things we do, and these are the boxes they've been put in to go after them, and these are what we want to do first, second, and third. But most importantly is, at last, we've actually broken down, using architecture principles, what the things are that we do and how they impact on what we do. So how do we have decision support? What is the management of our finances? How do we support the organization? And ultimately, at the point end of what we do, what is delivery management of our property? Which is a fascinating place to get to when you can now plan the next 12 months' work and what we're going to do and how we're going to try and do it. And I think it's because I'm wandering around that this isn't working. No, it's because I'm clicking on it. Oh, can you click? Cool. As we mentioned, we've known each other a while and can do this stand-up comedy show at the same time. Process first always. Our marketing team beg IT not to come up with marketing slogans and phrases. And here we go again with process first always is a marketing slogan that IT have invented to try and say, to try and explain that every time we start something, we have to start with the people. We go in, we sit down, we hold a counseling session. We understand what are the things that you do for the last 15 years that really make getting up on a Monday morning and coming to New Burlington Place really painful. Now let's work out what it would be if it was better. And now let's work out what the tech is that we apply to that to make it different. No, this is fine. What we landed on, I'm going to just put this down though, because there's no point. I'll just point at him. So having done all that work, understood what our business wants to do to be different and better, we have this phrase of using the word extraordinary an awful lot. What is what will make CxO extraordinary in 2028 is orchestration rather than AI. And that's landed really well because people are getting there were a few boos and jeers when how many times can you mention AI in one morning? Orchestration of the stuff we do, including AI, allows us now to understand how do we get the bag of goodies that we call digital, we bring it in, we run it through the enterprise architect's view of the world, who are now seen, as been mentioned already, real people who have more experience of our business than probably anybody else other than our chief exec. We now orchestrate our tools, our new ways of working, through a technology lens to deliver something different. And it's been such an amazing opportunity to look at how do we make what we do simple. I started at CxO a year and 3 months ago, first meeting with the chief exec. He described being an asset manager, the people at the pointy end, the people out there managing our assets and looking for customers, looking for land and managing construction, as being one of the most complex jobs that there possibly can be. Now, put that in your brain and then think, what is it we do? We buy land, we throw up a building, we put a customer in it, the customer moves out, we destroy the building, we build a new one, we find the customer. Shouldn't be that complex in many, many ways. And yet, we made everybody's life super complex by finding new small tools and gluing them together rather than orchestrating what was there. So our architecture capability now sold into our business with orchestration as a theme has allowed us to get to an advantage point that really is a blueprint for moving and doing something different. It allows us, though, to move into that AI space, to scale AI in a way that protects our information. Imagine your investor relations team coming to you and saying, I want to use Claude because I saw it on Instagram on Saturday. It looks really cool. Can I put all the data in it so that I can tell all the analysts why they should invest in CxO? But actually, by doing this and orchestrating access to the new tools that are there, the control, the level of governance we can apply changes and adds a different way of doing it. So we ran what we would call in the UK a beauty parade. We brought many, many, many different companies in and said, we've got this idea. We want to move into orchestration. We don't just want AI. We got down to 2. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. And it was fascinating to understand the differences between 2 market leaders in orchestration, in what they would offer an organization like ours, ranging from how many days organizations think it takes to modernize through orchestration a company of our size, all the way through to their cost model for how you use AI. One company saying, limitless, crack on, do it, want to see get advantage. Another saying, there's a limit to it, and it's going to go up 12% once you get to a certain limit, and you're going to have to work that sort of disincentives for building more. And it's just been the most fascinating and irritating 3 or 4 months to run the beauty parade of these 2 organizations. My other half, who's sat in the audience today, jokes that our dog knows the name of the 2 companies because they get said so much in our house as we've been having this debate over the last 3 months. But I think the reason for putting that up there and getting permission to put that up there was just the differences as you try to work out what the answer is to those original business problems, the orchestration layer that you've decided on. That's not you haven't got there when you've done that. You've now got to find the right partner. And we're very, very lucky that we're single-figure days away from being able to announce who that right partner is. Thank you. So all of this starts to come together. So we end up with a new forecasting and planning tool and a partner that we can announce and a plan. We end up with a new ERP. Property industry standard ERP is a solution called MRI, upgrading to that. We've built and delivered our asset managers an application on their devices out in the field that's standardized across the whole of UK and Europe. We're now moving into that orchestration, and we work out how we get the most possible value from everything that we've deployed already. So our core platform of capabilities becomes our advantage. So a year and 3 months ago, what the hell does architecture mean and why should I be bothered about it from a technology point of view becomes the concept of platform, helping us enhance who we are, deliver advantage, and truly change CxO, and hopefully start to really alert the property industry to what tech can do, and the fact that the word architecture doesn't just mean designing a building. There's one last slide.
We'll get there. Here we are.
Which is that one. So a little different journey, a real life experience of doing something that's, I don't know, it's been a very different industry for me. I've come from healthcare, clinical research, academia, retail, where we work together, government, and now in property. Being able to take all those different concepts and bring them to a new and different industry and try and drive it in a different way has been a lot of fun. But actually selling the professionalism and professional skills of people in this room to an industry that hasn't put value on that before has been a super challenge. One we've now met with means that actually we're trying to make a difference. So there you go. Thank you very much for the time.
We've got a little time for questions and maybe discussion, and I think it'd be great to interact it a little bit. So whatever brave soul is willing to come to the front of the room and join a conversation, come up. Yeah, let's go up here. Be on camera and share your thoughts. And you got to do it. It's the collaboration tax.
Cool. Yeah.
That kind of defeats the point.
The camera's there. For those on the camera, he went to start with you.
Yeah, I'd rather be off screen.
You can't hide. I know we're introverts.
Shame. Yeah, this may be a bit of an old school EA question, but I was wondering, when you kind of presented the capability map to your sort of stakeholders, did they have an urge to go, oh, we should change our org structure so it looks like this? And did you have that? How did that sort of negotiation around maybe a kind of matrix accountability from your org structure versus your capabilities, and how?
It's a really good point. People see a picture like that and they go to org structure and they go to people really quickly, don't they? Particularly when you've got people in different countries. So they didn't try to change the org structure. They tried to change the BACM to match the org structure. It was the other way around, because like, this is new. What on earth does it mean? And that's not how we do it. What we have found, though, is now it's landed more securely with people. The idea of a sponsor and a senior responsible owner for some of those boxes as an actual job in the organization has really caught hold. And I'm really enjoying the fact that our business now is seeing that as an outcome and putting it into job descriptions and making that fit. But it is so easy for people to turn that into an org conversation rather than a capability conversation. I'm not sure how you feel when you study all these people keep coming up.
That's how it is.
On the head with the mic.
I love the concept of orchestration, and I think it comes into play a lot of times. We're starting to put in a lot of orchestration agents, which connects with behavior and intent. But it's really been a pivot from maybe event-driven architecture, still business object state change, but it kind of like goes in parallel to what you were saying.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to say, do you have more context around that?
The organization that we've chosen to work with, they offer orchestration and the ability to build agents that are orchestrated. The tool that we are investing in allows us to orchestrate from multi-vendors, and we use that tool to access multi-LLMs in a safe manner. So actually, by putting orchestration in the middle and allowing that to orchestrate the agent capability that gets built or gets bought, means that we start to create glue across the whole thing. When I put up that last slide with some of the other tools, we've bought a tool from a company called Anaplan to do forecasting and planning. That will be like the big rocks in the glass. The orchestration and the agents will be the liquid that fills the glass up to join all that stuff together, which I think it just feels so cool.
Empowering. We have Databricks and we have others. Is we're just able to take information delivery and connect it to each of our applications while still doing the integration.
Yeah. It moves faster, doesn't it? It allows you to move at a pace that transformation's never really seen before. The number earlier on of 83% transformations fail. I think this is the reason we'll stop failing and start being much more pacey in how we deliver value and success.
Yeah. And multi-cloud, huge implication. Well, thank you.
Next in the firing line, Mr. Fulton.
Hey, Richard.
Michael.
Thanks for a great story. It really felt like a an old school architecture tale. So I enjoyed seeing that and not necessarily having everything be all about AI today. But I guess my question for you really is around your business stakeholders as you're going through this journey. You mentioned that very old school property kind of business people. They thought architecture was the building architecture, not the technical architecture and whatnot. So of all your business stakeholders, who was kind of the biggest challenge early on in the journey? And then now that you're so far along in the journey, who would you say has been kind of transformed into your biggest advocate?
Uh-oh, this has gotten lines. So they're going to watch this.
Glad you reminded me.
Rephrase
I always got your back.
I forgot that part.
I'll names have been changed to protect the innocent. Here we go. So one of the biggest detractors initially was somebody who has been in the organization a long time, who has his black book. He's not based in the UK and describes the world of the late 80s, early 90s as gold bars dropped through the letterbox. And that's because we had great buildings, great land, great customer relationships. We've got 1,000 customers, 50 of them are the big money. The 950 spend enough because they have a smaller piece of estate. So he was the biggest detractor. Very much like your team has grown to, 35 paid CxO people and 70 contractors. What on earth's going on? Why do we need all that? Surely we just need somebody with a typewriter and the Wi-Fi to work. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the starting point. What is fascinating is at a recent meeting that he was there with voting rights, he voted to do this.
Oh, wow.
In 12 months, 15 months, he's gone from this is, I'm about to swear, this is not a thing we should do, to this is something that actually I can see this being the vision of the future. And when we look at our peers / competitors, they've done the big ERP replacement. Microsoft Dynamics with a plugin called Yavica, KPMG helping them, it's like swallowed up the industry in huge ways. But it's 3 years and it's 40 million quid to do that. We ain't got 3 years or 40 million quid that we wanted to spend on this. So he's getting that as well. He's seeing that this is actually going to save me money, not cost me money, and I'm going to get value in week 2, which is just a brilliant thing to be able to say as CIO.
Absolutely. Very cool. Thank you for sharing
Thank you very much.
Like Broomhead, come on up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a receiving line. Watch out.
I just wanted to focus on orchestration versus ERP.
Yep.
I'm not familiar with the industry package that you mentioned. But of course, the ERP vendors would say that they do orchestration, and similarly, some people have said that ERP suites will go because these agents will take over and so forth. Are these going to be complementary, do you think, or do you think there's a little bit of competition between them, and how does that fit architecturally?
So I think it's a really good point. The ERP vendors that we spoke to in the run-up to this, you're quite right. We're saying we're going to do agentic capability behind it, then our one ERP will orchestrate the lot. But if you buy our ERP, all of the agentic and orchestration has to also have the same logo on the front of the box. Whereas the orchestration we bought allows us to have multi-vendors orchestrated through one and give us the chance to do best of all the worlds. I don't know whether ERP will die, but I think ERP becoming just the system of record, the place where all the stuff is, rather than the place where it's all done. The main reason, though, we decided not to do one big ERP to rule the world was a bit like how I said, how you do something in Germany is different to how you do it in Italy, is different how you do it in London, is different how you do it up north in the UK. And to make an ERP work at pace and deliver value, you got to kind of slam a thou shalt do everything the same everywhere. And I ain't going into Germany to say to an asset manager, can you start to manage your building like they do in Coventry, please? I'm not sure I'd get out alive.
Likely not. Michael, come on up.
Yeah. Richard, good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
I was here last year, so I remember,
Yeah.
remember our conversation. I'm just curious, a little bit of a change up. Everybody's talking about, the 2-letter word and the tech and the orchestration stuff like that. So I actually have a different question for you. I'm curious, so in the execution and planning of this, you sort of like hinted at it, but like I feel like you sort of implemented a change in the shift of your team that actually helped you. I'm assuming you had a team of architects.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, how did you structure the team? How did you define the roles? in an effort, because like most practices, and I've been a part of many different architecture practices, like they don't have like the training or the gaps or the assets to pull it off the way you did, because it's very innovative, very forward thinking. And so I'm curious how you did that.
So this is quite fascinating. So a year and 3 months ago, we didn't have an enterprise architect. We didn't have a chief architect.
Oh.
We were called the transformation and technology team. We weren't called digital. And we stole a architect from George there.
I heard he might be here.
Okay.
and made him a CxO person. And that person has now become absolutely ingrained in property, the industry, and CxO and its culture. So brought all the stripes of being an EA and being a consultant EA and brought it in, but then learnt property and learnt the culture of our organization. And boy, has that made a difference, because that guy now lives and breathes not just EA, but actually CxO and the property industry. And somebody said it earlier about architects being the only part of an organization other than the chief exec that can genuinely touch the whole organization. He's put himself into that role. And as we moved to become digital instead of transformation and technology, we took the organization on the journey, which is value first, process first. We're not here to do tin and wires. We created a digital board and asked the MD of the UK business to chair it. We took all of the digital people off the digital board. They're only invited to go to it when there's something they're presenting. So just rammed home at every opportunity that this is a business solution, not a technology solution, and it's our business. We're part of it. We're not in the basement with the drips coming down off the ceiling and the boxes of paper. And that was the key, is treat us like you treat everybody else who works here, rather than as the sort of cost line in the basement.
Wow, amazing. Like it's a great example of, I think, where the practice is headed. It really embedded the individual.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I'm assuming you built up the team, so it came in.
I mean, it's a very, very small team, back to the point that where 420 people actually work at CxO. So,
yeah, so smaller team, everything, ironically, that we were just talking about. So
it's very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, Rich, thank you for being a champion for our profession. I appreciate everything you do. Just take this as a small token of our appreciation. Absolutely. All right, I'm happy to keep it rolling with someone we may have heard of before. Perhaps you may know Wendy Keene. I'm so excited she's here with us today. So she has been a part of this journey from the beginning, and it's just a thrill that she considers herself one of us. We certainly consider her the same. She's got a keynote for us today, and I'm so excited to welcome her to the stage. Come on up, Wendy. And I'm sure we'll fight with a mouse, so you want to just point to us?
Sure. All right. Sorry, there's a lot of clicks.
Yeah.
Is this okay?
I would say for Rich. You can see if you're on camera right there.
Okay, so you want me to be?
And I can move
Well,
for you. You can
no, it doesn't matter. You tell me.
We will accommodate.
No, it's all good.
There we go.
It's all
See?
good.
Magic.
Oh
There
my
you
God,
are.
amazing. Fantastic. Well, I have one word from today, and that is wow, right? It's really an honor to be able to also contribute to this, and appreciate everyone joining online as well. So we're going to talk about the essential role of architects at the strategy table. We'll look at what does successful strategy execution actually look like and our role in that. I'll share 3 practical, really proven techniques to get more upfront in strategy execution, and then I'll end with a few ways to move into practical action on those ideas. So let's get started. And you can click one more time. Perfect. One more time, if you don't mind. Oh, we're a team. This is good. This is good. This is good. Well, everything is changing, isn't it? AI is changing everything, as we know, from industries to organizations and how they work and how we make decisions. And so for all these reasons, I think our role at the strategy table has never been more important than it is right now. And I know different teams experience different things, but I see an uptick in the interest in enterprise architecture and recognition of the value, especially by different groups of people that maybe it wasn't necessarily on their scope before, because it's helping to navigate AI and pace of change. And with pace of change, of course, we need to do strategy execution really well. Next slide. Sorry, bad timing. So there's a few reasons why I think architects are essential at the strategy table. The first, as we've mentioned multiple times today, Duncan, you mentioned in your presentation, right? Bringing the business context or the enterprise context and the why to AI and technology decision-making. I still see a lot of organizations are taking this sort of technology-first approach, and I think we can always bring them back to the business. That's an important part of our role. In addition, as we've heard here today, highlighting the full organizational impacts of AI and technology. I don't know that leaders, or we could even possibly all have our heads around what the full implications are, especially as things play out down the road on organizations. But I think we as a group of people really see the impacts to operating models and decision systems, and even, much different, ways to organize our organizations, like self-management. In addition, this I think is really important. We can help our organizations to envision a new future that is made possible with AI and technology. Rob said earlier today, sometimes the how drives the what, right? And this is a good example, because with AI and technology, we have a whole bunch of strategic options that weren't possible before. And as I just look at the way I see companies reacting to AI, it reminds me of when I was learning how to ride a motorcycle. And I lived in Chicago at the time. And I remember I was making this very tight turn onto a crowded street full of parked cars. And as I was making the turn, I was really fixated on this one car. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna hit that car. I'm gonna hit that car, like panic, I'm gonna hit that car. And I had this flash of my instructor in my mind saying, focus on where you want to go. Look into the turn. And as I did that, I sort of fixated on this invisible point in the road, but my body automatically adjusted. I didn't hit the car, right? But that's kind of the parallel here. It feels like there's a little bit of, we're staring at the car. There's some consternation. Oh my gosh, this is happening. We can't do anything about it. What is everybody else doing? But we can help our organizations to look into the turn and help them reimagine what is possible and who they really want to become. And lastly, we can help our organizations to build the capacity to translate strategy into coordinated action. This is always something they need, and many organizations are still challenged here, so important place to focus. So what does strategy execution excellence actually look like? There's a few characteristics as I look at best practice organizations. I could tell stories all day, but I will be brief. The first is that they look at strategy to execution as a function, not just a bunch of processes and teams that are fragmented and we sort of hope that we deliver what we need to. It's a thing, and that function is important as any other function in the organization, because it's the ability to change and it's the ability to adapt, and we all know how important that is. And it is a multidisciplinary function. Strategy execution takes a village of teams to work together from end to end. And so we also have a cohesive strategy to execution operating model with an end process that, still okay? That allows all those teams to work together. I think I'm good. Okay. I'm not good.
Oh, you're good. The microphone's not good. There's a difference.
So a couple examples here, something as simple as creating a strategy to execution playbook and co-creating it so that we all know how we work together to deliver that outcome, and accountability from end to end. In fact, some organizations have put all the organizational design and change disciplines under one business leader. That's a pretty radical but effective move, because it really centralizes the accountability. Successful organizations also operate with an enterprise mindset that is embedded in their culture. Honestly, when I start working with organizations now, I focus on the case for change, and I try to anchor on an enterprise mindset that we create as a principle or imperative, even embedded as an objective that we're going to commit to. And that makes a really big difference for behavior. I am encouraged to see more and more organizations doing this. Things they're declaring, we're going to be a capability-driven organization. We're going to operate with an enterprise mindset. Everyone needs to be a good enterprise citizen. I'm not making those things up. Those are real examples from organizations and business leaders that have set that tone. Of course, excellent strategy execution requires excellent strategies. That's really the starting point. Strategy that is decisive, coherent, and creates advantage. Not a bunch of fluff, not a bunch of initiatives that make people feel good, right? Something that actually is choice that can really serve as a North Star, especially as the organization needs to continue to adapt. And of course, strategy is much more adaptive than it's been as well. And that strategy has to be clearly communicated across the organization. Yeah. And then there's a matter of translating that strategy. So successful organizations are really good at the stuff that's front and center for us, which is translating strategy into coordinated, cross-silo, business-owned, capability-centered plans. I know that was a whole lot of words, but every one of them is important. And, you know, they really get that we have to structure work and bring people together cross-functionally, which requires them to do different things and go beyond just the product structures of organizing work. And two more things. Successful organizations have a continual alignment mechanism between strategy, capability, plans, execution. They can sense change and they can kind of ripple it through. So the entire strategy to execution process needs to be agile itself so we can sort of respond like this living organism to change. And finally, they measure success based on business objectives and outcomes, not activity, not delivery, not did we get it done, but did we actually move the needle? So our role in all of that, cool. Strategic role of architects in strategy execution. I know a lot might be familiar here, but just to reiterate. So first, it's thinking left to right. It's us thinking left to right, and it's us being engaged from left to right. And what I mean by that is starting with strategy and business into the technology and delivery, not thinking technology and delivery back to the business, right? That's a great place to end up. It's a great place to start our journey and build that traction, but ultimately we want to be going from left to right. Grant, please.
So we've both walked this journey a bit, right? I'll get on camera so
Oh,
you
I
can see
like
me.
it. Wait.
Where am I?
Oh, come on with me. I haven't seen you.
There we are. Hi. Okay. So we've both been on this journey a few times. Everyone wants to be on the left, right? Yeah. So tell me what's differentiated the architects that have earned their way to the left from the ones that's stuck on the right.
Ooh, great question. Well, first of all, it's thinking from left to right. And I'm serious about that. If you're thinking from right to left, like here's the tech and how do I go back to that business stuff? Like you have to put yourself in those business shoes. That's probably the biggest thing. It's the mindset. Like, I own this business as much as anybody. I'm caring about the outcomes. What's in the head of these business leaders? What keeps them up at night? It's thinking that way and going over. And then it's this, and I'll share these sort of three techniques, right? It's earning the seat at that table and doing strategic things and being able to show value and show your thinking so people want you at that table. Yeah, love it, love it. Next pop-up, please. So some things we do. Inform strategy and business model evolution, tremendously important. And as you say, Grant, that is a big seat at the table to be earned, not given, right? Yep, demonstrated. And part of informing strategy, it's not just, here's the capabilities we have, you know, informing strategy and even taking those capabilities and innovating to deliver new products, services. But it's also helping, especially for the people in this room, it's helping our business leaders to understand how they can leverage technology for strategic advantage and to entirely reimagine the business models, because I think we can see those things and we can really, really add value at the table from that perspective. It's surfacing system-wide impacts of decision-making. It's translating change. One more click, if you don't mind. One more, if you don't mind. That's sort of that whole golden thread there. It's, yeah, ensuring continual alignment from strategy to execution. And then finally, ensuring those measurable outcomes. As part of that translating strategy, there's another piece that is really important. And Grant, to your point, what do people do as they get to that table? There's this idea of integrated enterprise architecture and design, right? Business architecture is it's the keystone that locks it together, but it's also coming together with those other teams to literally design an experience, the organization, the people, the process, the technology. You can like tick off roles for all of those, right? So it is cohesive, and we're being intentional about enterprise design. It's not just the tech and a little bit of the capability and like the other stuff comes later. It's like integrated design and doing it together, and our role can truly drive that. Awesome. So how do we get up front in strategy execution? Again, I'll share 3 practical techniques. Some of them may not be new, but these are really, really tried and true around the planet. I see them working again and again, which is why I have a lot of conviction around them. They not only deliver immediate value, but they shift the thinking. So people start thinking enterprise, and they start seeing a new vision for strategy execution. But before I share the techniques, just a little bit on how strategy becomes reality. So strategy requires capabilities. Capabilities inform strategy. Capabilities enabled by people, process, technology, as we know, and the portfolio of work is going to make changes to the people, process, and technology to strengthen the capabilities so we can deliver on strategy. Nothing new there to anybody here, but I like to call that the golden thread. And I just share that because it's really that thinking that we exercise sort of left to right and right to left in these various scenarios. So the first technique is to bring an enterprise lens to investment decision making. This is something you can do anytime, honestly. Ideally, you're involved with your strategic portfolio management group, right? And offer to get to the table and do these views. This is a great way to show value. Or honestly, you can take any set of initiatives and align them back to objectives, align them back to capabilities, create heat map views, and raise conversations where things are out of alignment. That's basically the technique. So just to show an example here, it is a real example from a Fortune 500 company. I realize it's just colored boxes to you, but it's actually quite a powerful example here. This is their capability map at a level 2. So basically enterprise on a page. And we heat mapped it to strategy. So our red box on the left is most important to strategy, yellow, pretty important, and you can figure out the rest of the key. On the right-hand side, that's great, thanks. Right-hand side, that's the organizational investment. So this company has multiple portfolios. That's an aggregate view of all of the spend. And of course, there's separate portfolio views. On the right-hand side, the color coding is top third of the planned spend is red, middle third is yellow, bottom third green, gray, no planned spend. And now what you don't see, but was a real part of the value of this, was the number of business cases and the aggregate dollar amounts were in those boxes, obviously along with the capability names, which I've removed. And that was shocking because people were like, we are spending how many million on this and why, and what are we all doing? So this technique is good for every reason that we know it, because at least most organizations don't see this aggregate, and it's also a very objective way to look at it, and it's a very visual way to look at it. So it allows new enterprise conversations to happen. For two basically comparisons, left to right. If you see the bottom left-hand two capabilities there, they're not at all important to strategy. Of course, they are to running the business, but they're the top third of the planned spend, and that was coming from one portfolio, right? So if it's regulatory or something like that, fine. But if it's not, that one is seriously on the table for how do we spend money best as an enterprise. Without this view, they would have never made a different decision because that portfolio leader would have funded it because of course we know we need that, and they know their silo, right? The second comparison is the spend to itself, where we found a lot of redundancy and also so conflicts. And we'll do, and one more if you don't mind, yeah. In this case, we also found some conflicting philosophy around capabilities and how they were being delivered to customers, which is fine, except that customers in this company have multiple products. And so they're getting really different experiences. So credit to the leaders here. They tabled a number of things, paused where there was redundancy, and they paused a bunch of things in favor of creating an enterprise-wide set of customer experience principles and said, we can't do this. We got to make sure we have the right direction. So that's technique number one. Technique number two is translate strategy through an enterprise lens, just using that golden thread. A good insertion point for this is if your organization is doing a strategy refresh, has a new strategy, is doing a transformation, anytime you have, business direction that needs to be translated into action, that's an opportunity to get at the table. And what I see most organizations do, they sort of have the strategy pieces that in the blue columns there. You may call them different things, but then they sort of jump to the initiatives, right? To this laundry list of solutions and initiatives that's going to answer that. And that, skipping over the value stream and capability there, skipping over the second stage, that's where many of the execution challenges downstream are born. They're born there. They just show up later when we're funding things that are misaligned. We created something duplicate. We fragmented experiences for people. So it doesn't look like much, but this is a game changer. So instead, you take the strategy, which capabilities are impacted, in which value stream context. This is obviously only a very small part of this thread, but what starts to appear, and we know there's people, process, technology behind this. The capabilities just show us where is change happening. But what we start to see is these objectives, these different things we're doing across the enterprise, they're hitting the same capabilities. And so how do we think about work differently? How do we invest differently? How do we bring business ownership to those things that are really cross-cutting, right? So this is a serious step into capability-based planning when people really see that. And, underpinning this, and the example before, is the idea of capability assessment, right? That's we've referred to. How important is the capability? How well is it working? That's actually a fourth technique, standalone or used with others. Capability assessments are a great, people don't usually do them, right? They're a great way to get at the table and shift conversation. And again, thanks. And the last technique is to frame AI technology decisions through an enterprise business lens. And cool. This seems so basic and obvious, but I have to say it because I see it missing in most conversations. Conversations on AI and technology are about the solutions, or people, you all know this, right? We know this. People have different ideas in their minds. So as basic as it is, putting up a core blueprint of a value stream and the capabilities that we're talking about, and maybe there are multiple, it shifts the entire conversation, because now we're also all like staring at that shared mental model and having the conversation in context of that. And if we are now tying where we're going to have AI enablement or AI agents back to the capabilities, we immediately know what's the value of it, what else is impacted, and are we doing other technology investments in that space? Are we doing other things to that capability from regulation, acquisition, right? It brings it all there. And by the way, from a business architecture perspective, this is our orchestration blueprint, right? At a high level. So tremendously important. And this is the same blueprint we use for strategy, execution, et cetera. So just bring a blueprint to the conversation. Again, it's a way to move up in the strategy stack. So I'll just share a few words on moving into practical action. Next slide, please. And one more, thanks. So how do we make sure that we're not just technical advisors,
but people with working AV?
Awesome. So how do we make sure we are not just technical advisors, but true strategic trusted strategic partners? I'd offer some things around the skill set. And again, Grant, when you asked before, what people who have succeeded, how did they get there? It's mastering this stuff. It's really understanding strategy formulation itself, which is a discipline that's undergoing its own change. Strategic thinking, the integrated enterprise design that I mentioned before. So that also means we have to know about human-centered design. We have to know about organization design and other things to be able to sort of drive them and bring them together. Relationship building, communication mastery, org change, and influence. Those are just some top ones on my list. The only one that has anything to do with technology is integrated enterprise design, and that's only part of it. The next is also mindset. So, mindset is the way we see the world, and it's how we can also lead other people. So business first, as I said, think from left to right. Enterprise stewardship, so really thinking of ourselves, we kind of already do, but we are stewards of the enterprise, and also being relentlessly focused on outcomes, not just activities and delivery. And finally, the tool set around it is, I think the 3 or 4, if you consider capability assessment, those tools, there's a lot of ways and places you can apply those, and they will help you to, like I said, deliver immediate value and start shifting thinking. So practical next steps to move into action, assess your business architecture practice to ensure it's contemporary. Business architecture has grown up a lot in the last 15 years. And it did it under the radar of a lot of people. So if you haven't really looked at it recently, there's a lot of evolution. There's a lot of new depth and even standardization done by the Business Architecture Guild and other people. Also assessing your business architecture practice to make sure it's positioned to drive strategic impact for all of enterprise architecture, because business architecture and business architects are the tip of the spear, right, to actually be able to get upfront in strategy execution. Leveling up your team's strategic business skills and business architecture skills, if that's an area. Driving the enterprise mindset. So again, like I said, this is a place I start. Have those conversations with leaders and see if you can get an anchor around being enterprise driven or capability driven, just as a way to put a stake in the ground and get people to start shifting behavior. Create conversations. Sometimes we have to build intolerance for status quo. I find, even with all the statistics, with all people know in their organizations, it's like walking with a rock in your shoe. Like, you just get used to it. You're like, yeah, 70% of transformation efforts fail. Like, that's about right? But this is such an opportunity to get better. And agility isn't just through, the organization design and the technology. It's that, like I said, strategy to execution process. We really need it. Create a case for change on strategy execution, intentional integrated enterprise design that is powered by architecture and architects, of course. And finally, as I said earlier, help business leaders and their teams to, first of all, level up their understanding of technology. I think that's important. Not that we just bridge, but that we lift them up. And then also help them to reimagine a bigger and better future that's possible with all that we have available to us today. So with that, happy to chat, take questions.
Yeah, what brave soul wants to come up front? You know the drill now. Come on up, boss.
Quite the speed dating experience, which experienced. Always a pleasure, Wendy.
Oh, likewise.
Question regarding the skill set piece, if you don't mind bringing that back. There was a piece in there around communication mastery.
Yeah.
So what I always observe is we don't give that enough attention, right? Rich talked about it in terms of how his team has got embedded within the organization, right? And we observe the ability to speak a language the business wants to, and how we translate that into the technology world that it needs to. Any guidance on how we can help the practice develop that skills?
I mean, it's like sort of nebulous and hard, right? There's like basic skill building, like, okay, this is how to deliver a good story in the aspects. This is how to deliver a good presentation. This is how to visualize, simplify the complex. All that stuff is like sort of the low-hanging stuff that maybe is obvious. I think so much of it, context is huge. And honestly, the number one thing is, I think, the desire and the empathy. I know that sounds really strange because we can be entirely tooled in all that and I can learn all of that, but there's a difference between I really care about this person. I really understand their world, and I'm going to try to craft it in their language and put myself in their shoes. To me, that's such a big thing. And just like, how is it landing? How is it landing? It's just this very human aspect of it. I know it's not a great answer, but to me, that's the difference between having skills and mastery.
And that's another connection with the AI piece. How will an AI agent speak a business language to a business colleague? It might translate that into a technology solution, but how will that person element the AI replicate?
Yeah.
Not yet.
And there's so much context too. It's not just like, what business area am I in, but what kind of person am I? You know, maybe if I'm an executive, I may have these characteristics. So don't talk to me about, this is a really interesting finding. Talk to me about, this is going to move the bottom line. Like all this, very fine tuning stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Maybe one last question if someone's up. Come on up, Sarah. Right this way. Take the defunct baby.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Wendy. So I work for one of the regulators from the government in the UK. So and the question that I had was, I've been there 4 months, and one of the roles I was brought in to do was to write the first ever digital data strategy that the regulators ever had. But the ask for the strategy, I think, came from the wrong place, because they're probably, so I worked in the NHS nearly all of my career until going to the regulator, and have helped with many strategies, execute many strategies. But I feel like they think the strategy is what they need because they've never had one and they don't know how to catch up.
Yes.
So how do you almost make them stop and figure out why they need that strategy? Because at the moment, I feel like I could write something down that would be beautiful and would give them everything they need, even though they're petrified of AI. That's a different conversation. But how do you take them back before that first box?
Love it. Oof, I love it. Honestly, and maybe you don't have to pause, but as part of the process, you take them right back to the why and the what's the priority, what are we trying to do? I would take it back to the strategy. You tie that to value streams and capabilities. Your capabilities tie right to the data. Because if you do that, then you have this prioritized set of data that we need to focus on in the context of the business further through value streams. Then the data strategy is informed. Otherwise, it's like really disconnected. Like you said, it's sort of coming from the wrong place. So like, as part of the process, do the business stuff. That's just part of doing the data strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ah, awesome. Awesome.
All right. Well, Wendy, thank you again.
Thank you.
Who doesn't need more Yeti cups? Let's go.
Yes, thank you.
You're amazing. So let's give it up for Wendy. All right, we're going to keep it rolling. We've got to move it over here to, I don't know what I just clicked, but hopefully that doesn't destroy anything. Oh, I just removed that from the stage, just like that. Look at that. Okay. So Wendy, again, thank you for the amazing conversation and the thought leadership for our community. So we're coming up close here on the end of our fun. We're going to have a CxO panel first. I'm going to invite Rich back up. Mike might be calling in online here, so hopefully we'll see him showing up on. And then we have another Mike and Will. So we'll have 4 chairs up here, and let's just see if our friend Mike the architect is with us. Not yet, so we'll have to see if that becomes a live edit, which is just fine. Yep, that's perfect. Pick a chair, any chair. All right, so let's just talk about who we have coming up front here. Oh, there's Mike. There he is, Mr. the Architect himself. We'll add him to the stage. There he is. And I'm going to have to change views here so that he shows up. That's not so bad, right? You can see us. You can see him. Mike, just say hello so we can hear you.
Hey, everybody.
All right, we're a little hot, so if we can turn down the volume in the back there, someone can feel creative.
Hello. It's probably because I'm a loud talker. At least that's what my wife tells me.
All right, all right. Here comes Will. They're coming. All right, so I'm going to put some questions up on the screen so we get some things to work with here. We have heard a lot today, and it has been a ride, right? I think this has been pretty fun. So I appreciate everyone engaging. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the debate. And I think we're seeing a lot of harmony. Like when Wendy was talking through that capability-based planning, that is exactly what we're doing in my company right now at Ecolab. It's all value streams down to capabilities, and it's starting to get real. And I think that's the differentiator. You can't spend $2 on people and process if you're not doing capability-driven planning. Well, you can, but you're going to spend it stupidly, right? I mean, it's just not going to work. So I guess, Rich, I'd love to start with you and kind of get each of us to weigh in on this one because it's a great question. Will, I'm going to be real curious what you share. Maybe share a little bit about yourself if you haven't already introduced yourself. We know who you are, Rich, since you just went. But what is real versus the hype?
Ooh, what is real versus that? I think that the reality that we're landing on is forcing us to look at value rather than the hype of the value that you could get. So 3 years ago in my organization, we tried to create a metric of what the value would be of creating a bespoke app for all our asset managers. And nobody now looks at what we said the change would be and says, yes, we've saved X hours a day, X days a month. No, nobody believes that that's the case. And what is interesting is every asset manager says it wouldn't work if they didn't have that app. So that's the hype was how many days you're going to save, but the reality is it is going to make a difference. We've just got to make sure we understand how we talk about the difference it's going to make.
A friend of mine, Jeff Winter, he's a part of the group as well, jokes about where's the ROI? And he's like looking under couch cushions and checking under the desk and like, has anyone seen the ROI? Steve, did you see the ROI? Like, it's just kind of the joke of the thing. But I think you look back and go, we have to do it, but we have to figure out how we monetize it and measure it. Will, what's real versus the hype? And maybe tell everyone who you are as well.
Yeah, hi. Will Everett from Walgreens, Chief Architect and Chief Data Officer there. And I said earlier I was a bit of the cynic when it comes to this stuff. I'm actually at the point where I think it's almost all hype. But it has more to do with where we are in the maturity curve than anything else. It's if I look back at where we were 15 years ago, 10 years ago in cloud computing, everybody solved it, they figured it out, and they said we're gonna do it this way. And then 3 years later, they said, well, that was a terrible idea. Now we're gonna do it this other way. And then a few years later, they said, oh, that was also a terrible idea. So we go back and we try it again, and we're sort of in the middle of that phase 3 of it all.
Yeah.
The challenge I see today with AI and everybody has this willingness to adopt and this eagerness to adopt this stuff, and I just don't think we know where we're going yet. And I think the visions are good. I think the way we talk about it is very, very beyond, a little bit beyond the horizon that we can see today. I think when we start to get into the practical implementations, we as a broad industry are not ready. And I look at things like changes in prioritization from an architectural perspective. When we look at what was important to architecture 3 years ago, that's changing now. Now we have to look more at things like, do we do a better job of failure management? Are we doing a better job of looking at things like model drift? All of these nuances that didn't matter 2 years ago. And I don't know that we're mature enough yet. I believe we'll get there. I just don't think that's where we are today.
All right. And then one of the biggest anti-skeptics, the other Mike, Mr. Mike Carroll. Then we'll go to you, Mr. Mike Walker.
So I'm not an anti-skeptic about the technology. I'm actually in his camp. I'm a skeptic about us, and which is what you're really saying.
Exactly.
Because I think the hype about the technology is largely aimed at us and our ability to figure out how to use it effectively for what it does, right? And what it's capable of. I think your discussion here about that lack of maturity is really our inability to understand what it can do, what it should do, and what it will do, all in the same sentence.
Well, and what we don't want it to do. And that's because I don't
100%.
And this gets back into the failure management thing, right? So the day we start putting decisions of consequence in play,
irreversible decisions,
right? Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yep. Like here's some money to a customer, like be it a refund or whatever it is. As soon as that becomes material, now we've got risks that we may not be okay with having. And as exciting as it gets to say, hey, we can remove N number of humans from the process if we just automate this. It's like, yes, but you may not want to. right? There may be a need to have that deeper, someone was talking about human connection earlier. There may be an absolute need for that.
So let's you and I create a little tension here, right? Because
sorry,
right? Because we're going to.
You haven't even got Mike Walker
So
involved
Mike,
yet.
Mike can weigh in on this one, right? There is this paradigm that it is easy for us to measure the things that we do that we make mistakes on because we can see the cost, right? And we know we make a mistake. The difficult part is when we don't make a decision and we don't do it. Who owns that cost, right? That and that's the difficult part, and that's where we say, well, let's don't do it. But there's a cost to that to our company, and how do we start to get better at quantifying what that cost really is? Because if we understand the technology, we ought to be able to start to look at that. So
what is the table stakes, isn't it? Basically, if you're going to exist, what are the table stakes you've got to bet to continue to?
Mike Walker, weigh in. You get your full
guys.
name. We got another Mike here.
Yeah,
Hey.
Mike Walker. So yeah, quick introduction. The Reader's Digest version is spent the past 25, 30 years in the enterprise architecture, strategy, innovation management space. Recently was a VP at Microsoft, working with top life sciences companies around the world on some of the very things that we're talking about today. And, I love all the business capability modeling pieces and the strategy stuff. It's all very passionate, near and dear to my heart. But also was former VP over at Gartner. So when we talk about hype, I know a couple things about hype. Being the author of the Emerging Technologies Hype Cycle for a number of years. Yes, I apologize for the pain in which I may have inflicted upon you. And so with that, it's, over 5,000 engagements. I published 150 research notes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now, and this is highly relevant to this conversation. So I decided to leave my cushy job at Microsoft. One of the top companies on the planet doing great AI stuff, to essentially open my own independent consulting firm where essentially I'm helping, folks that some of the challenges that I just mentioned in highly complex and regulated industries figure out how to de-risk generative AI. Huge issue. And a lot of this stuff that people are not even talking about because they're so buried in the hype. And so on one side, I'm doing that consulting work, and that's the reason why I'm not there today. I had my plane booked, my hotel, et cetera, but unfortunately, clients had other plans for me. And so on the second side, I've got an AI startup as well. And so I partnered with the chief AI architect over at Thermo Fisher. Double master's, PhD, 40 patents, smart guy. And we're directly targeting this issue of how to make AI safe, responsible, and so we don't do boneheaded things. So as far as the hype, in my opinion, here's the issue. What's not hype is the tech is moving faster than humans can absorb. There's an announcement every day of either one of the big players announcing something, or it's, a startup or what have you doing novel things. Second, we talk about doing strategy. And I love strategy. I love workshops. But as soon as we write this stuff down, it's out of date because it's moving so fast. Now, that doesn't mean that we stop doing great strategy work. It means that we have to not only focus on the strategy, but also the change management and fix the absorption level. But I'll leave you with kind of this pithy, and I've got a bunch of stuff to say here, but I'm going to cap it off here because I don't want to pontificate. Humans are analog. We're trying to live in an AI world. If we let that sink for a moment, how we make decisions as humans isn't from an Excel spreadsheet or an LLM that gave us a really great answer. It happens through emotion. So when you say that decision felt right, I mean, technically, that's kind of what's happening in your brain. But we have to remember that when we're making these decisions, that just having the data from an AI engine isn't enough. The human element is vital in the equation. And so the more that we can understand it, embrace it, and try to go Neuralink and all that great stuff, we need to balance. And so I'll pause there. There's other things that I can say about it, but those are some initial thoughts.
I think the same thing that my colleagues here have mentioned around the hype, the same thing that was the hype in cloud is the hype thing that's the hype now. It's the lemmings going over the cliff thinking they can just go spend some money and do some AI stuff. And the problem is they outnumber us like they do every other time, right? There's this really funny meme I saw online where there's this road that splits. And at the middle of the road where it splits, there's a bookshelf. And there's people that are grabbing a book and there's walking the lonely road that's kind of to a realization. And then there's the herd making a sharp left to the cliff, right? Of let's make a huge cloud commit because the money's there. We'll figure it out along the way. And then you move the easy workloads and all the hard ones are there because you have to the goalposts are now spend as much in cloud as you can by this date or else. And you put yourself into these traps. So I find that the hype is always there, and it's the people that are doing capability-based planning and using AI as an enabler to drive the outcomes are seeing the outcomes. And I think that's exactly how I've seen many of us in this room and how I see Ecolab successful too. They pulled $250 million out last year. They're going to get $350 million this year. And it's because it's capability-based planning and value stream enablement with AI as one of the hows, not the only how. So I'm curious because we've been talking a lot about this agentic and reasoning at the edge. What's the cost of almost right? And Mr. Carroll, I want to start with you on this one.
Wow. The cost of being almost right.
Speaking specifically about an AI solution that's like, yeah, oh yeah, it looks good, right? Sure, we'll trust that. That can be the.
So if it's doing reasoning at the edge in the same way that we do reasoning at the edge, right? So what we do is as people, we take what we know to be true about things, and then we know what outcome we want, or we're trying to shape off in the future, and then we say, what interventions can I apply, right, in that world? We do counterfactuals in our head, and we say, all right, the next thing I can do that matters is X. Now, some of us try and apply temporal effect to that, and some of us don't, right? But we say that I'm going to do the next thing and hope to get the best causal outcome at some point in the future, right? And that's called agency. We're creating agency for ourselves because we're trying to shape that outcome. If it's an LLM doing that, and it's reasonably close to you in time, the decision's trying to be made, the cost of doing that on a reversible decision is not very, very high, right? If you are picking your wife, right? I'm on 44, right? And
AI didn't help you in that one. You made that choice on your own, worked out pretty well.
So here comes the judgment, and I'm going to be quiet now because you're going to speak about judgment, right? If the judgment factor is not there, then the costs get asymmetrically higher, right? Because what happens is all these externalities come into play further down the line that you hadn't thought about because you lack judgment.
So I agree with you. The thing that jumps out to me comes back to the failure management conversation, that the issue is your ability to identify that the problem has happened. And then we had a conversation earlier today. I apologize. I don't remember who the speaker was, but we were talking about context and context management, right? The idea of saying, does the agent on the edge have the appropriate context and the ability to react intelligently based on the decisioning processes we've given it, based on whatever this edge case, corner case happens to have been. And that's where if there's a disconnect, you may not see it for months. And the analogy I use for this is if Grant and I have a deal that says basically he gives me $1, I give him a donut.
Sweet deal.
It's a good deal. It's a good donut, right? So, and we operate on this all the time. It's great. And you show up and you give me a Canadian dollar. And if the decisioning doesn't understand the difference semantically, you have a big problem. And the reason this is a risk is because you know, I'm a longtime SQL guy. The beauty of SQL is that it's, in my opinion, the most elegant language you can use, but also it can be syntactically correct and semantically wrong. And if anybody's ever done financial reporting using SQL statements, you will get an absolute result that does not reflect reality at all. And it gives it to you with confidence. It doesn't question it. It's like, no errors, here you go. Right? And I think that's the risk that we're dealing with now. It's the idea that the answer comes back, he gave me $1, I gave him a donut, but we may not see that for 3 months or until the bank shows up and says, hey, you're a little bit short here, what happened? Like we can't see that. And that's where the worry is. And again, this is not a reflection on the tech. It's on us. It's on us saying, are we ready? Are we putting the guardrails in place to make this happen? And if I can get 1 more minute, I want to talk about the diffusion of innovation curve, the idea of innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. The other risk we have on this, the idea of using cutting edge technology, is we will create it for the innovator. We'll create it for the person that understands things like model drift, and they understand things about challenges and context, which is great until they leave the room and the majority shows up. And now what we're doing is, and if you want to see this in practice, go look at microservice architecture 10 years ago versus last month. The train wreck of we are modern because everything is a microservice, using that sort of bizarre connection, is a reflection of this behavior. We gave an idea of microservices to people that didn't have the equipment they needed to solve the problem. I'm done now.
Go ahead.
I think there's something around culture in there, though, as well. So the times when it is wrong, if you haven't set the culture up beforehand to test, then the colleague never goes back to try it again because they've been burnt, because it's wrong. We deployed Copilot. I'm sure Mike was thrilled at that point. We deployed Copilot across the whole of SeaGrow, and we didn't do training. We just told people, have a go and see what happens. But a bit like you just said there around the innovator. So 450 people, 20% are using Copilot like every waking moment of their working day, but getting things wrong and understanding that sometimes Copilot would get things wrong. The rest turn up and start assuming it's just right every time. And they're banging out job descriptions with the wrong titles on and stuff, but just power and send.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to set the ability to understand when the bit that goes wrong, 10% of the failure, how do you catch that?
Mike Walker, what do you think?
So all great points. I agree with them. The Microsoft angle, you know, even when I worked there, I was probably very critical of Copilot, and in a lot of ways still am. So not as impressed with Copilot. So as a bridge from the previous question to this question, and Grant, I agree that those folks that will succeed will figure out ways to leverage AI to make them more productive. Here's the challenge. I talked about that absorption factor and building those competencies, not just skill. I took a test and it was a multiple guess exam and I got a B. It's competency. I know how to do it. I practice it, etc. A fool with a tool is still a fool. What does that mean? Within generative AI, there's bias. You can say to it, hey, I believe this position, but I know my position's wrong. Provide me a compelling, bulletproof positioning to my CEO on why we should do this. And then we've got some challenges there. So that's more on the human dynamic side. That kind of gets the last point. I think depending on the problem is the more accurate way of asking this when we talk about the cost of doing it right. If we're talking about the operating room and figuring out where to make the incision, stakes are high, right? And so we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, what problem are we really trying to solve here? And based on that problem, what is the appropriate AI? We keep talking, you know, in my opinion, when we talk about AI, we talk about in generality, right? And we just lump all of it together. But really, it's a family of technologies. And so, like with the work that I'm doing in highly regulated industries, someone mentioned the EU AI Act. in life sciences, there's Annex 22, which gives specific guidance on how to use agentic AI and generative AI. And essentially, the regs say, thou shalt not use probabilistic AI methods on life or death situations or, financial services transactions, etc. It's not allowed. You have to use deterministic methods. So now when we start talking about how we design our systems, it's not just a one size fits all, I've got a frontier model, let's go. No, because that is probabilistic in nature, and it's generating net new information that never existed before, that is translated by an engine. Rather, we want deterministic methods in there as well for that mission critical, those vital decisions. We want to be able to have that full traceability. And that's why advanced techniques like lean four proofs are so important to layer into our architecture so that we can mathematically verify what that AI actually did. Instead of today in an LLM, it's a black box. I'm not sure how it got to that decision. Yeah, we trained it, but how did it really get to that decision? Now, I got two more points, but Grant, you're chomping at the bit to ask a question.
Yeah. I think I'm watching the reaction in the room, and we're seeing some of the other panelists react. So I'm wanting to get some other thoughts too. I think part of this is I certainly understand what you're sharing, but also there's indeterministic things in diagnosis of cancer and polyps that show up in your gut, and a lot of those pieces where there is a place for this in the medical world that we know actually adds quite a lot of value. So it's not black and white. Both things are true. Will, I saw you wince once or twice. Rich, I saw you grimace. What are you thinking?
I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think that we need to be careful. I like the idea of the deterministic versus probabilistic. And again, one of the earlier presenters had a great comparison between the two of saying, hey, do this or do this. So there was some very clear logic about how you wanted to approach it. I think that we have to find a way to build the guardrails in. I think we need to figure out, we can say all, so here's the deterministic risk that the EU law has. What happens when your deterministic function is dependent on a probabilistic upstream activity? And so
or downstream.
Yeah, so well, I mean, it depends it depends what we're evaluating, right? But if the
trajectory
government is
of the
saying,
problem.
if the government is telling you that must be deterministic, but the dependency is probabilistic, then like, what am I now, right? and I think that's the question. So I'm not disagreeing with what you're getting at. It was just sort of in my head, the first thing that came to mind is now we're dealing with an environment that is going to inherently become complicated. Not complex, because it's going to be complex no matter what we do, but complicated.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand it, we have a significant risk.
I think it's around I don't like using the word, but the agility of the guardrails as well. So I think what Mike said is bang on. It's really cool. But you've got to be able to apply the guardrails differently, dependent, almost fluid with the nature of where it's going, as opposed to let's decide what the guardrails are, the tools are, and now let's crack on. I'll see you in 5 years. But you need to almost have it around you the whole time to make sure that you're testing and checking back on all aspects of it.
That's it, because the issue here is we don't want to put anything into production and then not check on it until 5 years later. This is not like, this stuff is now living. It's something we need to process and manage all the time. And if you're in a situation where you're getting a lot of regulations, the regulations continuously change. How are you adapting to those? Yeah, so right on.
Well,
and real quick, I'll just add real quick here, Grant.
Please go ahead.
This is why we want to make sure that we double down on the business capability modeling to properly assess and classify where those decisions are made, which now links to my risk model and my information model. AI is just leveraging information to create insights, right? So we have to understand that base data. If we can draw that red thread from what we want to do as a business in 5 years to the capabilities in which we'll need to enable that to when we operate this, what's the risks around it? How do we govern it? And what information supports it? If we answer just those questions, these other bits become very straightforward, and we can have self-service governance where it's, hey, Wild West here, go forth in your sandbox, go for it. On the other end of the spectrum, well, we've got to ratchet it down because, we could be killing people here.
To point that way. That's where you are. Yes. We'll be right at time. So maybe we could just get a couple thoughts for those who have been in the room for the day. And I'm not sure, Mike, if you're able to dial into some of the sessions, but you kind of know the topic and the subject matter we're playing with here. So you probably can play in this too. Just a few words on like what your main insight is coming out of the day, and for people to kind of take home for them to move as we went from scanning and looking at the analysts and what they're saying. We went through some focus today, and now we're about to move into action. So as we make that pivot, first we're going to celebrate. We're going to talk about the network. We're going to talk about our winners for our awards. But as we move into dinner and we move into our social hour, it's time to start to think about action. So what words of wisdom? And since you're furthest away from me, Mike Walker, why don't you start and we'll go down the line and we'll wrap the panel there.
No, I mean, I was able to kind of come in and out of sessions, but what I really liked about the conversation is I didn't see a whole lot of hand waving. Folks seem to be very pragmatic about the current state of affairs, had some really great advice. Like I said, I think the humanistic side is so important in the kind of the coexistence. There are going to be widespread economic challenges and role clarity, etc. But again, I think this is about how enterprise architecture is a discipline, and sometimes enterprise architecture is a bad name, and I've asserted that maybe we shouldn't even be using that as a term. But what we do as a profession is so vital to the success of these organizations being successful with AI, whether they realize it or not. And I think it just makes everything that we do that much more impactful. So thank you, everybody, for all your great insights.
Thank you, Mike.
I think the role of the enterprise architect has been the longest understanding that we are part of our business and we're not the basement guys doing IT. And I think one of the things I take from today the most is, if I think even back to last year, the amount of times people would have said business capability models or that side of it was higher than anywhere else. But compared to this year, it's been on practically every presentation, everybody's lips. How do we make what is done by people in this room be part of the answers to our business problems, not the thing IT does in the basement? I think is just unbelievable for this profession.
I couldn't agree more, Will.
First of all, I'm super jealous of the business capability model you presented. It was really
that
well
was
done.
cool, right?
And anybody who's tried to do one, the politics alone is amazing to try to navigate. I think that we as a profession are the linchpin to this being successful. This is if we leave it in the hands of business owners, and again, like our business people are getting more and more technically savvy, they're starting to figure out what to do. If they're left to their own devices, this is not going to go the way people want it to, I don't think. So I do think we are this is our sweet spot, big time in this space. I like the ideas that have been presented. Again, I hope we all walk away saying, okay, so now what does a solution architect on an AI project do? What's the thing, and what don't I want them to do, and what belongs in a platform, and what belongs in the hands of a business engineering team? Those are questions I think we need to be ready. I hope that when we do this next year, that we tell those stories, because if we don't, because the vision is great. I think everybody in the room has a vision of where we want to go. I think we've got to figure out, okay, what does it look practically on the field? I'm excited by it. It's certainly the most interesting thing I've seen in quite a while.
Mr. Carroll.
So I don't think you're a cynic. I think you deliberately try and create tension because we're trying to get to better questions, right? Because you can't fool me with that, right? And so my advice for all of us is, you have to deliberately create the tension because we're all trying to get this right. We're not trying to be right. And without that tension, we will not be successful at this. And the only way we get this right is that tension makes us work harder at solving this, because this is not easy. That it's not the technology. The tension has to be there to make us work harder at us, right? It's how we do this that makes it more effective. And we need to ask better questions about us in order to get there. So please keep making us ask better questions, right?
I
And,
will.
right? And all of us take a lesson from him and deliberately create that tension so that we ask much better questions.
The last thing I'll build on from everything that's been said that I violently agree with is there's some folks who've talked about imposter syndrome at every level, right? Folks that I've met in the ranks, people in this room even, right? If we're operating from fear, we can't be curious. We can't be challenging. We won't learn. So I think it's critically important. We leave our ego at the door. We say, here's what I'm thinking. What are you seeing? We get curious, and we know that this is a journey that is about learning quickly, adapting, and adjusting. So we have to have that mindset if we're going to be successful, and we have to have friends. And that's what we have here in the network. So thank you for a fantastic conversation. I'm going to invite my board to join me up here, the folks that helped me make this crazy thing happen. It's pretty awesome. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. We just move it over here, like that. Yeah.
Have a second person with PSA badges. We need to collect them before they leave.
Everybody, a little PSA. We got to collect the green badges before we go. Just remember. Yeah, we'll be collecting them. So look for us. We'll handle it. Look for this gentleman specifically. So we got a lot of great things to talk about and not a lot of prep on this because we've been prepping for the conversations that you've just heard, not for like the perfect description of our group. Because honestly, we're really about enabling us to have the conversation as a network and really discussing the problems in front of us. But it's important we pause for a minute and talk about what it is we're building here. Philip, can I count on you to just sort of advance this on slides? Awesome. So, and I guess you can see it behind me, which is perfect. So we'll go to the first slide here and just kind of take you into this. So the first thing we got to do is talk about who we are. So I'm Grant Ecker. I lead architecture at Ecolab. And with the help of these gentlemen sitting up here with me, we created this amazing thing together. Junior.
Hi guys, my name is Junior Brandt. I'm the Chief Architect and CEO at Covillier.
Hey everyone, Brian Chambers. I have the most professional picture on LinkedIn
by
of
far.
Anybody in here. That is indeed me. So I'm the chief architect at Chick-fil-A. We're a restaurant company mostly in the US and also here in the UK now. So
awesome.
Hi, I'm Randy Potter and work for Capgemini, and myself, and if Jan is still here, I think she stepped out, and Dapo, who was here earlier. There's 18 of us that are master architects within Capgemini. So I'm one of those. I'm work with some amazing people. Those 18 in particular, I consider myself lucky to be there. And I will say that I saw Brian. I knew it was Brian in the hotel, even though I saw him from the back about 20, 30 yards away because he was wearing that hat.
Oh, was it?
Nice.
I could tell yeah. So
was he wearing the shades
happy
too?
to be here.
No.
I might have
Awesome.
brought those shades. I'll put them on for you later.
So Brian came up with this statement, and I think it really speaks to what we are. A network for the world's architecture leaders to learn, share, and drive outcomes. That is what we are here to do. And ladies and gentlemen, we're doing it. We are this way. Thank you, sir. I'm like not following my own little camera rules here. All right, hit the next slide up for us. Oh, yep, come on, little Randy. We'll get in camera here. All right, so hit the next one if you don't mind. So that just zoomed into London for no reason. That's where we are. So we're here to meet our peers, to widen perspectives, share best practices, grow as leaders, develop talent, drive outcomes. We are 657 chief architect practice leaders strong. That's amazing, right? That's 70 of them are here. It's crazy. And we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, fully volunteer, here to drive outcomes and purpose. And it's really just about the value we can create together, because you cannot learn what we need to learn by reading a book or reading an article. You need to be talking to people and continuously iterating and sharpening your knife. And iron sharpens iron. And that's what this room is. It's a room full of iron. We're no cost. We're no selling. We're not delegated. Why are we not delegated? Well, the important thing I've learned is if people need to see their peers or they stop coming. And there's certain it's important. If you're not seeing the peers, you go, okay, that's great. I'll send my guy who talks to that guy, and they're going to make some good solutions together. So we have to have a group for us as the leaders so we can bring in others. And I'll explain that in a minute when we get into the digital expert network. There's a place for everyone, but you have to have some structure. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It breaks. We're vendor neutral, and we try to respect the Chapman House rules. Let's move to the next one. All right, so the benefits. What is the point of coming together? Anyone want to speak to this? Maybe share your thoughts? Junior?
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
This is it, right? This is exactly what that first line's all about. The in-person conversations, the perspectives that's generated. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, I think my mind has been changed on topics that I thought I was entirely comfortable with. I'm sure that's happened with every single person in the room. I said it earlier as well, the collective brain power in this room and across our network is absolutely phenomenal. And it's a network that can be leveraged. I leverage this network
See what
day
he did there?
to
Can
day.
be. He did that.
We use this day in and day out in our consultancy business when we are engaging with customers. We've got an awkward question that we don't have a good answer to. I'll be on the phone to one of our network members saying, have you seen this before? Or just what's your thoughts on it? You know, as a practice leader and as an organizational leader, is driving the ability to share across the network. It's phenomenal.
You can filter. You can say, I need to find a peer in this industry, in this city, focused on data and AI. Here's 5 people you can call.
I'll just add, who are you doing this with? You're doing it with the people you work with every day, but who else? And I think you have an opportunity in this room to identify people where it's like you've got their cell number in your phone and you can text them or call them when you need them, like Junior mentioned. But this is a place to find people to do this with, and the work will always be there. There's always more to do. What you're going to remember, I don't think, is necessarily the work. It's going to be who you did it with. So I think it's just an amazing opportunity to create that circle of people around you.
Randy, anything you might add?
I said it earlier on the talent piece that we did. This is how it's not only for us, but it's it's for the next generation behind us, and making sure that they're going to make it as well.
Love that. Another thing that I'm really passionate about is aggregating our moments. We need a voice for the architecture profession. We need one. It's incredibly important because people don't think of us in that strategy room. We've talked about it a lot today. Part of that is to show our thought leadership out loud, to be at events, to be building that conversation, to be the sought after voice in these thought leadership moments. So that can translate into the boardrooms of our organizations. When we use our own amplification source of this network to celebrate each other, we're building our voice. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of that we're doing together. Let's hit the next one. So this is an example. We started going to these C-Vision events that I really enjoy. And we got, I'd go and have a great time, and I'd have a couple other CAN members. I'd meet people that should be CAN members at these things. And after a while, I'm talking to the promoters, and I'm like, we got a lot of synergy here. You need to fill the stage with thought leaders. I can't organize an event like London every month in every city. It's not realistic, and we don't have enough people in every city. But if they're going across the globe, we can just take a couple of those chairs. We can create a keynote for just a panel, and we do that at a Connected Worker. We do that at American CIO. We create tracks, right? In the American CIO, we actually had a whole track for chief architects. We did that at CypherCon, at SecretCon, which is coming up here in Minnesota. So these are things that I think really help. And then when we get enough of us together, well, why don't we get dinner together, right? So we got Eraser that brought us together at the SAP EA Learning Forum with Paul. And then over here, we actually were with Linda Finley's TCBAF event. and celebrated afterwards with Neil Sample, who helped us have a facility to learn together as business architects. So this is really cool. And you can kind of see we get an outcome of outreach, we get an outcome of connection, we get an outcome of gravity, and then we get to connect. And we have amazing sponsors that help us do this at no cost and join us in that conversation in a non-selling mode. And we can afford to do it. It's not too expensive because no one's earning a paycheck from this. Let's hit the next one. So why spend time here? Maybe one of you folks would be willing to share a thought. I know we've shared a couple things, but maybe there's a bullet on here we hadn't touched yet.
I think one of them is the last one, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
Is, there's a lot of churn, in our space, and having a network like this can be really helpful. So that's one.
It is.
I think just from a career perspective, and before I start over there, I think I can count 6 people that I've worked with in 3 organizations just in the room, people that's grown through that piece. So yes, absolutely, as Randy said, that understanding your positioning within the industry and what that represents directly translates to your career path, that career development. It's phenomenally powerful.
I'll say that I don't think I would be able to sit on stage to chair conferences if it wasn't for the thought leadership that I gain in this room. I learn from the people in this room, and then I'm able to curate that into a conversation that I know has some thoughts. Yeah, Mike.
The bottom one?
The bottom one, the accelerate job search.
So that's important. CIOs used to turn about once every 5 years.
Yeah.
In this industry. Now it's once every 4, right? And so that has direct effect, and I think your point is right on the money.
So Mike Carroll just mentioned that the job churn is going faster, so we need to have a network. We can't be looking for that network when we're looking. We need to have that network, so when we're looking, it's a lot easier. Let's hit the next one if we could. So this is where we're taking it into the broader organization. So we have to be undelegated in our chief architect network, but these little red dots here, those are the chief architects in the chief architect network, bringing the rest of our companies together. And what we're going to try to do as part of our conversation is to find a few topics that we want to expand, that we think is important, whether it's getting to multi-cloud or agent to agent or taking a reference architecture for AI into operating models. And we're going to bring our people together that are solving those problems in our companies, and we're going to create a conversation that brings that external insight inside our organizations beyond just us, but without diluting what the chief architect network is. So this is where we're going to go next, and this is how we're going to involve anyone who might be listening. So hit the next one. I think I'm going to ask the question of what problems do you need external collaboration on? And if you're not the chief architect in your organization, why don't you bug them to join? Because they can then play that red dot role and bring this organization to bear for your company and start to help us facilitate the industry conversation we need to address the pace of innovation we're seeing in the market. I think we're right about at time, so we've got to be getting close to the end. Hit the next one if you don't mind. The AV gremlins are brutal. So keeping it simple, right? Find peers in knowledge, connect at events, speak on stage, amplify architecture. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we're doing. So appreciate you taking a minute to learn a little bit about what we're all about. With this, we're going to step into something that is pretty damn fun. We're going to move into our awards ceremony. So let's take a minute and just get organized for that. If you could advance us one more click there. So this is it. And I'm going to share, I'd love actually our board to join me as well. And also, as we get into this process.
Hey, Grant, can I interrupt you on one thing?
Yeah.
I just saw somebody leave. I want to let you know, you need to turn in this green badge on the other side of the gates, or we get fined $100 per badge. So when we're all done,
yeah,
he's going to be the guard. He's going to be out there picking up badges. But I'm just letting you know, in case you leave before that, you need to drop it off at the front desk.
How much did we budget for that?
0.
Maybe not enough.
Yeah, maybe not enough. All right, so let's step into this amazing conversation. So we have got our top 5 the folks that, and how did this happen? How did we get the top 5? Well, actually, maybe Philip, you could share a few words on this, if you don't mind.
So, yes, the top 5 European architecture leaders. It's such a wonderful initiative that Can put together. This will be the first European leader that has been named. So, yeah, really, really exciting. And yeah, for a bit of information about how this works. So, about 6 months or a few months before today, the word was put out about the European architecture leader. And there will be one for the Dallas event. Sorry, is Atlanta the next event?
TBD, I think.
TBD. Okay. For Americas later this year. So you quite simply, you can nominate someone within the CAN network to be Architecture Leader of the Year. That is then collated and the top 5 are created, and then CAN members are able to vote on their winner. So yes, if you're interested more on that, you can find out more about the next one on the CAN website, and yeah, get nominating for the next event. We will now be just getting things set up and ready for this part of the day.
Actually, I think he's going to put it up here because the camera's. I don't know where he's going to.
We got a little room transformation.
It's like the Oscars. We need to make it right.
Have this, right?
The red carpet is coming out. No expense spared. It's
there you go. That's good. That looks great.
You need to leave the camera?
What's that? What's that? I'll be right back. I'll be ready to jump into it.
There's one final thing. It'll be worth the wait, I promise you.
He's going to go get the Bitcoins.
Here we go. I told you, worth the wait.
We gotta celebrate, guys. This is cool. All right, so I think we're now officially ready to get started with our top 5 awards. So, who will win the first ever Architecture Leader of the Year Awards for Europe 2026? We have 5 awesome nominees. Chloe Gray, Director of Enterprise Architecture and Business Architecture at the University of Manchester. Duncan Robson, Senior Director, Analyst in EA. We got to hear him speak today. Oliver Crunk, Founder of Crunk Advisory. Surrender Lal, Head of Cyber Governance, Risk and Compliance at DMG. And Wendy Keene, Founder and Managing Director at S2E Transformation. Let's give them a round of applause. The slides are a little funny, as you've been seeing today. The first person I want to recognize is Surrender. If you could come up and join us. So I've had the privilege of getting to know Surrender through the American CIO, and I'll invite my board to step up here with me. Oh, I don't know. It may have happened. And it's been absolutely amazing to watch his thought leadership and his representation of architecture leadership in the in our industry. And I also have, he's not a bad speaker either, if I'm honest. So I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I think you're making a big impact in our industry, and your peers have noticed it as well. So congratulations to you. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you, Surrender. Yeah, hang out if you'd like. All right, next up, I'd like to welcome Chloe Gray to join us. So Chloe has done some pretty amazing things in our industry. You just published a book with BCS. You're now helping we talk about how important it is developing the next generation of architects. And you're doing that now at the University of Manchester and been representing our profession. I forgot to ask Surinder to say a few words. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, come on up. It's fine. It's fine. No, stay. I actually wanted him to stay upstage anyway, so.
All right, guys. Someone once said to me, you're in the wrong room if you're the smartest person in it, and there's definitely no danger of that today. There's an awful lot of brain power in this room, so, any accolade, any recognition is a privilege, especially from peers. So I'm grateful, and long may we continue as a profession. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay up here. We'll get a group picture, Surinder, in a moment. So sorry for the out of order, but I'll fix a mistake if I see it. Chloe, please share your words.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for this acknowledgement. It's not an easy job, is it, being an enterprise or a business architect? But what's really important is that human side, that what I've learned throughout my whole career, working with people. And that's the whole point we're here. Well, how can we enable people? And not just with tech, but with process, with data, with everything else. And so it's a real privilege to be in this profession and a real privilege to be able to write about it and pass on the word as I was speaking with the fellow members of this network. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Well, thank you for all you've done. Chloe, come up for a picture. We got to grab one of those. Thank you. Amazing. I'll get it right. Up next, I'd like to welcome Duncan to join us. So we had the privilege of learning from Duncan last year as he joined us in London, and we got him before Gartner, just so you know.
That is true.
That's it. And I think he's absolutely representing us incredibly well, and I'm really proud of what you've accomplished and the voice you've created in industry. And I'm curious, does anyone else have some things they may want to share as well? I feel like I'm hogging all the fun, and I get to say all the things.
You're good. Doing a good job.
All right. Well,
you have the jacket.
I do have the jacket.
Yeah.
I do have the jacket. Well, share a few words with us, Duncan.
Yeah. Just to echo Chloe, actually, one of the things we had a meeting at the British Computer Society a couple of years ago. And we all sat there and we said, actually, this can be quite a lonely job as a chief architect. You're between a rock and a hard place between trying to get things done. So I'm really appreciative of this community and having all the peers together. I think it's brilliant. I'm really excited how the profession is changing, how we're moving from technology, looking at more things like empathy and how we actually work with people. So very exciting to see how we progress.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, we got to do a picture. Oh, I'll get the hang of it, I promise. Very good. All right, I've got to get a little thing here ready. So we're getting to the final rounds here. This is getting a little serious. Okay, let me just hide around the corner. There we are. All right, I'd like to welcome Oliver Crunk to join us on stage. Come on up, Oliver. So Oliver has impressed me for the moment since the moment I met him on the train about a decade ago. He has been the thought leader known for your sustainability impact. You have been heavily involved in multiple thought leadership forums, and I feel like you're really representing us incredibly well. And it's not about what Grant thinks. Again, remember, this is the community's voice. I'm just holding the microphone for us. The community voted astoundingly for you, and I just want you to know that the people wrote me and said, I'm voting for Ali because he deserves this. I'm voting for Ali because he's making a difference. And it was incredibly visible how much support you have. So as you step out and start your own thing, I just want you to know that this room is very proud to count you among us. What's that? Say a few words, my friend.
I feel like I've said quite a lot today already, but yeah, again, echoing what others have said, like this
this community is unparalleled, really, in terms of like the peer kind of conversations you can have. And I thank you everyone for everyone's support. Like, it's pretty scary times to be setting something up at the moment, because obviously the world's a pretty uncertain place, but the support I've had from the network's been fantastic. So thank you, everyone.
Congratulations, Ali. One person's name has not been called. Can anyone guess who that might be? And we have a little extra something for that situation. So it looks like this. So Wendy Keene, join us. I don't think many of us are shocked. I'm kind of at a loss of words. You absolutely are a champion for us. And I'm so grateful that you have championed this community and that you've championed our profession. And you'll go to Dubai, you'll go anywhere around the world, and you find time to do it between climbing mountains. You're helping our profession climb these hills. So I just find it absolutely fitting that you would be the first ever overall winner. Congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you all. I think about that mosaic. I think it's at Gatwick Airport of the Queen. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Like, that feels like what this is. And thank you, but I'm just one tile of all of us that are making up this mission that we're doing. We are rising a tide together, and we are at the forefront of shaping the future. So just a thank you, and here's to us, right? Yeah.
Let's get a picture with Wendy and then invite all the winners up to get a shot. All right, could I invite our top 5 up to get a picture with the board? We're all good.
Yeah, somebody else can come over here too. Come on, Duncan. Yeah, come on, you're the star of the show. Get over here.
There we are. That's right. Congratulations, guys. Amazing. Red carpet. That came on the plane too. Well, what a fitting way to close our first ever conversation. Actually, Wendy, I can't have you go away just yet because we need you to close out the session with Philip.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I get the honor of doing the closing remarks for today's amazing event. If any of you have ever joined my closing remarks at a SwitchOn event before, you'll know that I like to keep them quite short and sweet. Main reason for this is you've all taken on board a lot of information over the course of today. I know that I certainly have. And for everyone here, I'm sure you're looking forward to the after-event refreshments. So firstly, just a few thank yous, really. A huge thank you to everyone that's joined in on this live stream, to everyone in the room for everything that you do for the architecture community. We're not architects, we organise events, and we like to see ourselves as community builders. It's an honour for us to be here today and to work alongside the Chief Architect Network across our events across the globe. So yeah, a huge thank you to all of you, to Wendy, and huge congratulations to you, and thank you for everything that you do for the community and for the industry as well. But I think the biggest thanks today really needs to go to Grant. Yes. Because what he does to make this happen is really, it goes above and beyond what anyone needs to do for an industry. So a huge thank you. He had 50 minutes sleep last night because he was busy putting together all of these slides after DJing and setting up all of last night. So yeah, it's amazing what you do, and we're happy to support you in any way that we possibly can.
Well, just a thanks to everybody here and online, because we make the discipline real. And as I said, we're shaping the future, and just a huge thank you for getting the CAN voice out around the world, because we can do that individually in our organizations and at a greater level globally as well. So here's to making a difference together and more events like this. And as others have said, we are shaping the next generation, and not just the one but behind us and behind that, but also the kids. So let's even make this the most exciting job to be in as well for kids.
There we are. I completely agree. All right. Well, thank you and congratulations. I'll give you a few. Oh, I got to put on the other thing. No big deal. Not bad though. First time at this. So we did a pretty good show for just learning how this works. So join us. Actually, if you have a thought on who should be the leader in Atlanta, you can fill that in right now. Public nominations are open for the Architect Leader of the Year 26 Americas. So that's open public period. Anyone, you don't have to be a member of CAN to nominate. You just pick an architecture leader who inspires you, and then we'll take our top 5, and they'll be voted on by the community of the CAN to ultimately be honored in Atlanta. And I'm very excited about that. So take a minute and go there. It's tinyurl.com/EA Leader 2026. And thank you, Chief Architect Network. Join us in Atlanta this September. And with that, we are adjourned. Oh, wait. Oh,
Just
wait,
one
there's
final
more.
thing.
One more thing.
One final pitch from me. So the SwitchOn Exchange Americas is taking place next Thursday, purely virtual. We have 10 CAN members joining as speakers. So it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful day. Grant will be moderating one of the panel discussions with 3 CAN members as well. So go to the website. You can register for free, saving yourself some money with the code CAN London. So please do so, and we'll see you all online next Thursday.
What an amazing thing. It's a gift. Anyone who tuned in gets to watch the show for free. That's it, folks. Thank you for being here with us. Our first ever in-person SwitchOn. Thank you, Philip, and for your organization partnering with us from our very beginning and inception. We're going to go have some fun this evening, and we're going to activate. So let's hear it for a great day one.